Germany of Iron and Blood. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 876, Cowardly King. Spain unexpectedly regained Gibraltar, which greatly exceeded the expectations of other countries. Would the British be so kind as to return Gibraltar to Spain? This is obviously impossible. Almost everyone believed that there must be some kind of conspiracy. It's no secret that the Germans are eyeing Gibraltar. Even in terms of Gibraltar's strategic position, no world hegemon will tolerate that this strategic stronghold is not under its control. Other countries are waiting for Germany's response. Should they choose to swallow their anger and suffer this hidden loss, or become angry and use force against Spain? Swallowing your breath. This is obviously not in line with Germany's behavior style. What's more, the German emperor was originally a young man. Young people are always impulsive when they do things. If force is used, then Germany's approach would be a little too domineering. Although Germany has such strength and capital, no country is willing to be too overbearing as a world hegemon. In that case, the interests of other countries will not be guaranteed. Therefore, many countries hope to be able to see Germany's future behavior style from the reaction of the Germans this time. Then formulate corresponding countermeasures. Spain, Royal Palace of Madrid. Spanish King Alfonso XIII was as anxious as ants on a hot pan. Now he has regretted it. In fact, when the German fleet appeared off the coast of Gibraltar, he already regretted it. He has already perceived Germany's determination for Gibraltar from it. This made Alfonso XIII very worried that Germany would attack Spain desperately. If that's the case, they definitely won't be able to resist it. Such consequences are simply not something the Kingdom of Spain can afford. What should we do? What should we do now? The German fleet has already approached Gibraltar and will launch an attack soon. If we are not careful, it will turn into a war between us and Germany. At that time, what will we do? It can withstand the German attack. Alfonso XIII said anxiously. Your Majesty, the German fleet just arrived in Gibraltar and did not launch an attack. Perhaps the situation will not be as bad as we imagined. If the Germans wanted to launch an attack, they would have done it directly, and there is no need to wait until now is the time. Prime Minister Count Romanone said. Won't the Germans attack? A gleam of joy flashed in Alfonso XIII's eyes. His greatest fear was that the Germans would attack and his country would be doomed. It would be all the better if the Germans would not attack. Your greatest fear was that the Germans would attack and his country would be doomed. Majesty, judging from the current situation, the possibility of the Germans' attack is not too great. After all, Gibraltar has always been our inherent territory. It is a matter of course for us to recover Gibraltar. No one can blame us on this issue. What's more, Germany, as the world's hegemon and the most powerful country in the world, must also take their reputation into account. If the world's hegemon can unscrupulously attack other countries, then is the world still in chaos? Other countries will never allow the Germans to do that. Therefore, I think the Germans will eventually choose to let it go. Foreign Minister Prito also jumped out with a look that he knew that such a thing would happen. Look. Prince Alfonso XIII was originally an extremely timid person. After listening to the words of Romanones and Prito, he thought their views were very reasonable. So, the worry in my heart disappeared. It would be great if the Germans would not attack us and choose to admit the fait accompli. I will become the only king of Spain to regain Gibraltar. Alfonso XIII had a full face happy look. He himself is also a very happy person, and he loves face very much. Things like regaining lost territories are undoubtedly a big facelift. Now that there is no threat from the Germans, Alfonso XIII hopes certainly to enjoy this honor. Your Majesty, even if the Germans won't attack us, this time they suffered a dark loss. They must have been very dissatisfied with us. So, I think it's time for us to contact the Germans and find a way to make up for us. After all, Germany is the hegemon of the world, and its strength is far stronger than ours. It would be the best if we can not offend Germany, Earl Romanone suggested. Alfonso XIII nodded. He was originally a timid person. Let him offend the world overlord. How could he have such courage? If the temptation to regain Gibraltar was not too great this time, he would not dare to do that. Alfonso XIII felt like a gambler and finally won the bet. If you continue to gamble, you will most likely lose your money. So, it's time to take it easy, Your Majesty. At the same time, our army must be prepared. In case the Germans are really ready to attack, we can't admit defeat directly. In that case, we will lose face completely. Earl Romanones continued. What? Prepare to fight? How can that be? How can we beat the Germans? Alfonso XIII shook his head like a rattle. Your Majesty, the Germans may not dare to attack, but we must also be prepared just in case. If the Germans attack, we should at least fight them. Of course, in order to avoid larger losses, we should control the scope of the water Gibraltar. In that case, even if we lose, our losses will not be too great. Similarly, we have an explanation to the people. It is not us. I don't want to keep Gibraltar, but the enemy is too powerful. I believe that the people can understand it. In this case, His Majesty will have no responsibility. In addition, we can re-establish the image of the Kingdom of Spain all over the world. Let they know that the Kingdom of Spain has not yet fallen. Even in the face of a world hegemon like Germany, we dare to fight them. This is very helpful for improving our international image. Count Romanones continued. Alfonso XIII was already dumbfounded. He never thought that Count Romanones would have so many things to say. However, when he thought about it carefully, it seemed very feasible. Okay, Your Excellency Prime Minister, just do as you say. Alfonso XIII said. Chapter 877, Traitor. On the outskirts of Madrid, a magnificent manor. All Madrid knew that there was no other building in Spain that could compare with this estate, except that of His Majesty the King's Palace. The owner of this manor is a resident of Spanish Foreign Minister Prieto. Relying on his high position and close relationship with Alfonso XIII, Prieto made a lot of money. However, no one cares. Sir, the British ambassador is here. As soon as he got home, the butler came up to report. Prieto frowned. He was also frightened this time. You know, he was the one who encouraged Alfonso XIII to take back Gibraltar. Now, the German Chenbing Gibraltar is almost in a fight with Spain. This is a threat to the whole of Spain. Although it seems that the possibility of war is very small now, if a war does break out because of this, Alfonso XIII will definitely not let him go. This almost scared Prieto to death. Let him go to the secret room. Prieto ordered. Yes, sir. The butler immediately went to make arrangements. Mr. Prieto went to change his clothes before going to the secret room to meet the British ambassador. Congratulations, Your Excellency. Your country has successfully recovered Gibraltar. Upon meeting, the British ambassador complimented. HMPH. Your Excellency, you almost killed me this time. Our army just entered Gibraltar, and the German fleet arrived in Gibraltar. If the Germans did not restrain themselves, the war has already broken out. Once the war breaks out, Your Majesty the King, you will never let me go. Prieto said angrily. I surprised you. This is what you promised. The British ambassador smiled and handed out a check. Prieto took the telegram and saw that it was a check for 1 million marks from the Deutsche Commerzbank. It was a reward promised by the British ambassador before. For the sake of Qin, Prieto finally had a smile on his face. Your Excellency, this is not an example. What you asked to do is really too risky. Prieto said with a smile. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, these matters are just a matter of effort for you. The British ambassador complimented. I just want to get closer to His Majesty. Prieto said modestly. Your Excellency, there is one more thing to trouble Your Excellency. If you can succeed, the benefits will be indispensable. The British ambassador continued. What's the matter? Prieto asked. The Germans have suffered a loss this time, and they will definitely find trouble with your country. We hope that your country can be tougher. The British ambassador said. What? It's impossible. That would detonate a war between us and the Germans. That would be of no benefit to Spain. No, absolutely no. Prieto shook his head again and again. He knew that these British people had no good intentions, but wanted to provoke the relationship between Spain and Germany. If war breaks out between the two countries, the British will definitely applaud. But was Spain a match for the Germans? At that time, it will not be Spain that will suffer heavy losses. Prito would never do such a thing. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, it is impossible for the Germans to go to war with Spain. If they do so, they will be condemned by the international community. Even if they are the world's most powerful country, they cannot casually invade a sovereign country. I promise, as long as you let the country be tougher, the Germans will definitely compromise. The British ambassador persuaded earnestly. No, the risk is too great. I can't bet on the fate of the country. Prito still shook his head. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, after this is done, we can give you 5 million marks, said the British ambassador. 5 million marks? Prito couldn't help, but his eyes lit up. But thinking of the huge risk, he still shook his head. 10 million marks. Your Excellency, don't worry, there will never be a war. Even if a war breaks out, the scale will be limited to Gibraltar. This will have no impact on the Kingdom of Spain at all. The British ambassador continued to persuade Rode. 10 million marks. Prito was moved. This is definitely a huge sum of money for him. Even though he is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Spain, because the Spanish economy has been sluggish and the people are in dire straits these years, he has not made much money. Of course, Prito knew that doing so might push Spain into the abyss. However, there was always a trace of luck in his heart. That is, things will not be so big, and the Germans will not go to war with Spain. Even if a war does break out, the scale will not be too large. At most it will be limited to Gibraltar. That way, it's no big deal. Even if Alfonso XIII blamed him, it would not be too severe. Okay, Ambassador, I agree to your request. However, I want you to pay a part of the deposit first. Prito said. Of course there is no problem, Your Excellency the Foreign Minister. This is 2 million marks. After the matter is completed, we will pay you the remaining 8 million marks. The British ambassador smiled. Prito accepted the check without hesitation. Although he is an important minister of the Kingdom of Spain, he should make his own contribution to the strength of Spain, instead of betraying his country and putting his country in danger. But, for someone like Prito, patriotism comes at a price. If the price offered by others is higher, it is not impossible to sell the country. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, may we have a happy cooperation, said the British ambassador. Happy cooperation, I will do my best, Prito said. He has a reputation, and he doesn't just stop doing things after receiving money. The British ambassador soon left Prito's estate. Such actions still need to be kept as confidential as possible. If it is discovered, it will not end well. After all, even if Spain declines, it is still a kingdom. It is undoubtedly easy to crush a diplomat to death. Even the British Empire can't compare to Spain. After all, the current British Empire is no longer the British Empire that dominated the world. It's just a declining country huddled in Canada, lingering on its last legs. After seeing off the British ambassador, Prito had a look of confusion on his face. He knew very well what the British were planning. He also knew what danger he would bring to Spain if he did so. This made him feel a little sorry. However, he was equally reluctant to give up the money that was about to come in hand. This makes him schizophrenic. Chapter 878. Too much bullying. Your Excellency, please see the German ambassador. In the office of Spanish Foreign Minister Prito, the secretary is reporting to him. The German ambassador? It's time to come. Let him come in. Prito said. He knew that hiding was impossible. The Germans must have come to ask the teacher this time. If they deal with it carelessly and anger the Germans, it will be a big deal. However, he took money from the British and promised to be tough. This made Prito quite embarrassed. Soon, the German ambassador, led by the secretary, entered Prito's office. His Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, good morning. The German ambassador looked very humble. However, the pride of the diplomats of the world's most powerful country is faintly revealed. Good morning, Your Excellency Ambassador. Come and bring me 2 cups of coffee, Prito ordered. Yes, Your Excellency. The secretary quickly brought over 2 cups of coffee. After some pleasantries, the conversation came to the point. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, your country's sudden recovery of Gibraltar shocked our country. It has an impact on the peaceful and stable situation in the Mediterranean Sea, the German ambassador said. Preto frowned. The logic of the Germans made him a little unacceptable. His Excellency, Gibraltar has always been the territory of the Kingdom of Spain. It is completely legal and reasonable for our country to recover Gibraltar, and there is no problem, Preto said. His attitude became tougher. On the one hand, it was the British check that made the difference. On the other hand, the attitude of the Germans is too annoying. Gibraltar is the territory of Spain. This is just your unilateral claim. At the earliest time, Gibraltar was the settlement of the Phoenicians in North Africa. It was conquered by the Roman Empire in the 2nd century BC. The Arabs occupied it in the 8th century AD. It was not included in Spanish rule until 1501. However, in 1704, the British occupied it until now. Therefore, it is not appropriate to say that Gibraltar is Spanish territory, said the German ambassador. He did his homework before meeting Preto. Preto's face couldn't help but become very ugly. From the German ambassador's words, it can be clearly felt how big the Germans' ambitions for Gibraltar are. Otherwise, they would not have bothered to look up the information. His Excellency, Gibraltar is now the territory of the Kingdom of Spain. This is a fact that no one can change, Preto said. Really? Your Excellency the Foreign Minister, you should be very clear that Gibraltar was originally a colony of the British. When the Empire was preparing to attack Gibraltar, the British suddenly handed over Gibraltar to the Kingdom of Spain. This made the Empire suspicious. Your country and the British, is there any ulterior transaction? The Empire has reason to suspect that your country has colluded with the British. You have even joined the Allied powers. The war between the Empire and the UK is not over yet. If your country joins the Allied powers, then what awaits your country will be a war, the German ambassador said in a gloomy tone. Preto's face suddenly changed. He was not a fool, so he could tell that the Germans were threatening them with war. The meaning of the Germans is very obvious. If Spain does not compromise and give him this time, then Germany will go to war against them. Is Spain a rival to Germany? That is obviously impossible. Your Excellency, Ambassador, you are slandering. Spain did not collude with Britain, nor did we join the Allied powers, Preto said hastily. Huh. Then why did the British hand over Gibraltar to you? If there is no trick in it, who would believe it? The German ambassador snorted coldly. His Excellency, if Germany invades Spain under imaginary excuses, the entire international community will condemn you, Preto said. It's not up to you to decide whether it's an imaginary excuse or not. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, please tell Your Majesty the King that the Empire's patience is limited. By this time tomorrow, I hope to get a satisfactory answer. Farewell, it's gone. The German ambassador left Preto's office straight after saying this. Preto's face was livid, and after the German ambassador left, he cursed. Too much bullying. The Germans are too much bullying. Can they really bully other countries just because they have become the hegemon of the world? Spain does not will compromise. However, after speaking, Preto immediately asked the secretary to prepare the car. He had to go to the palace to report the matter to Alfonso XIII. The Germans have officially put pressure on the Spanish government, which is a big deal. If you are not careful, it may become the fuse of the war. Preto knew very well that, if the two countries went to war, the Kingdom of Spain would definitely lose, and there was no chance of winning. Your Majesty, the Germans are deceiving too much. The German ambassador has just officially raised the threat of war to our country. If we don't compromise this time, the Germans may launch a war against us. Preto said. What should we do? Otherwise, let's withdraw from Gibraltar, Alfonso XIII said immediately. He doesn't want to really go to war with Germany, because he knows that once the war starts, Spain will definitely be defeated. And as a king, he will definitely end up with nothing good. Rather than being a subjugated king, it is better to keep the present glory and wealth. Your Majesty, the Germans may not really dare to go to war. Maybe they are just scaring us. If we are frightened by them like this, and hand over Gibraltar, then all the majesty of the kingdom will be lost. Prime Minister Count Romanone said. Scare us? What if the Germans are serious? No, this is too risky. Alfonso XIII shook his head like a rattle, and firmly disagreed with the risk. Preto gritted his teeth. If he really compromised now, according to what Alfonso XIII said, the British would definitely not be satisfied. He will never get the subsequent money of up to 8 million marks, Your Majesty. I also think that the Germans are mostly trying to scare us. If they wanted to do something, they would have done it long ago. Their fleet in Gibraltar is not a vegetarian. In addition, there are transport ships in the fleet. Obviously, there are Army or Marine Corps. The German invasion of Gibraltar was definitely planned for a long time. It's just that they didn't expect that the British would return Gibraltar to us. Preto said. Chapter 879, Threat of War. Your Majesty, the Germans must have failed to invade Gibraltar militarily because they were afraid of being condemned by the international community. Then they wanted to put pressure on us through diplomatic means to make us give up. Preto looked very determined. Is that so? Alfonso XIII hesitated. He is very independent. He will think whatever the ministers say. This undoubtedly made him waver on this issue. He was afraid of the outbreak of war, afraid that the Germans would destroy Spain, making him a king of subjugation. At the same time, he lingered at the glory that would come with the recapture of Gibraltar. Your Majesty, it must be like this. The Germans want to intimidate us and make them compromise and retreat so that they can realize their dream of occupying Gibraltar. If we are determined not to compromise, the Germans will definitely retreat. Preto said. King Alfonso XIII couldn't help but believe most of what Preto said. Your Majesty, why don't we summon the German ambassador and see what conditions they have before we talk about it? Prime Minister Count Romanone suggested. Okay, let's do this. Alfonso XIII said. The palace immediately sent someone to summon the German ambassador, and within half an hour, the German ambassador appeared in the palace. Your Excellency, Gibraltar has always been the territory of the Kingdom of Spain. It was just occupied by the British before. Now, we have recovered Gibraltar, which is legal and reasonable. I hope that the German Empire will not interfere in the internal affairs of the Kingdom of Spain. Alfonso XIII said. Although he is an idiot, he has been the king for so many years, and he knows what to say in this situation. Your Majesty, I have already discussed this issue with your country's foreign minister. Therefore, I don't want to waste any more time here. The German ambassador was not humble in the face of Alfonso XIII. Alfonso XIII's face suddenly turned ugly, and Preto had already told him about the conversation with the German ambassador. He was also very dissatisfied with the Germans' unreasonable words. Your Excellency, our country needs to tell your country that we have not colluded with the British, let alone joined the Allied powers. Germany cannot just fabricate charges and impose them on us. Count Romanone said. The German ambassador nodded. Well, if you insist on this, then the German Empire needs to see your sincerity. If Spain has not joined the Allied powers, it is not an ally of the British. Then, Gibraltar is not for you. It is of great use. The German Empire hopes that the Kingdom of Spain can lease Gibraltar to us. In this case, the German Empire will recognize that the Kingdom of Spain has sovereignty over Gibraltar. Alfonso XIII and the others immediately began to think about how this would benefit them. If Germany can recognize the Kingdom of Spain's sovereignty over Gibraltar, then no one can deny this. At the same time, this can be regarded as a step up for Spain. It is much better than falling out with Germany and breaking out of war. In addition, it may be possible to earn a rent from the Germans. Such a result seems to be very good. Your Excellency, I don't know how much rent your country is willing to pay. How many years is the lease? Alfonso XIII asked. Your Majesty, we hope to lease Gibraltar for 99 years at the price of 1 mark, said the German ambassador. 1 mark. Rent for 99 years. Alfonso XIII was dumbfounded. Similarly, Romanones and Preto couldn't believe what they heard. Your Excellency, this is too bullying. How can you get Gibraltar on loan for 1 mark a year? Preto said angrily. No, Your Excellency the Minister of Foreign Affairs, you heard it wrong. Not 1 mark a year, but 99 years, a total of 1 mark, said the German ambassador. There is a total of 1 mark and 99 years, so what is the difference between this and giving it to you for free? Count Romanones looked gloomy. Of course there is a difference, at least the sovereignty belongs to you. After 99 years, Gibraltar will belong to Spain. At that time, no one will raise any objections. HMPH. Who can tell what will happen after 99 years? Alfonso XIII was also very angry. He hated the Germans for treating him like a fool. He is almost certain that, if he accepts the terms of the Germans, then Gibraltar may not belong to Spain. After the 99-year lease expires, the Germans will definitely think of other ways and ask for an extension. Unless the German Empire has collapsed by then, or the Kingdom of Spain has become extremely powerful, it will be possible to take back Gibraltar. However, both of these possibilities are too small. Your Majesty, this is the condition of the Empire. It is up to your country to agree or not. Of course, if your country does not agree, then I'm afraid that you have to be prepared to bear the wrath of the Empire. The German ambassador said, His Excellency, are you threatening us with war? Spain and Germany have no enmity. If Germany attacks Spain recklessly, it will make the whole world laugh. Earl Romanones yelled angrily. No, Your Excellency the Earl. This is not a threat of war. The German Empire does not want to break out of war with the Kingdom of Spain. However, the prerequisite is that the interests of the Empire will not be damaged. Otherwise, the Empire will use all means to ensure the Empire's interests will not be harmed. The German ambassador smiled. However, his words made the monarchs and ministers of the Kingdom of Spain feel a chill from the depths of their souls. Okay, Your Majesty the King. I hope to get a reply from your country tomorrow morning. May God bless the Kingdom of Spain. After the German ambassador finished speaking, he bowed to Alfonso XIII and left. God. This is really a threat of war. The Germans have threatened us with war. What should we do now? Can our army beat the Germans? Alfonso XIII asked in panic mode. Obviously, the attitude of the German ambassador just now frightened him. Now he suspects that if he does not end the conditions offered by the Germans will not hesitate to go to war against them. However, if he was to accept the German offer to lease Gibraltar for 99 years for 1 mark, he couldn't do it. In that case, his face and the face of the Kingdom of Spain will be completely lost. Chapter 880. Backup. Or, let's agree to the Germans' request. In this case, although the face will be damaged, at least we will not be attacked by the Germans. In this case, it is the best result for the kingdom. Alfonso XIII said. Obviously, after being intimidated by the German ambassador, his attitude has tended to compromise with the Germans. Your Majesty, if we compromise with the Germans, the Kingdom of Spain will definitely become the laughingstock of the whole world. At that time, our reputation will be discredited. At the same time, it may also arouse the dissatisfaction of the domestic people and trigger a new round of opposition to the government. Riots. In that case, the consequences will be unpredictable. Count Romanones was a little worried. A tangled look appeared on Alfonso XIII's face. At such a critical moment, he had another difficulty in choosing. For a monarch without courage, it is too difficult for him to make a choice in the face of such a complicated situation. Your Majesty, the German ambassador's voice is very harsh. However, this may just show that they are not determined to fight us. They just want to scare us, so that we will agree to their terms. If we compromise with them now, if you don't, then you've really been fooled by them, Preto said. Is this really the case? Alfonso XIII was a little puzzled. Your Majesty, why don't you wait for a while? Let's inquire about other news, and then make a decision. Preto suggested. Okay, inquire about other news, and report to me, as soon as possible. The time given by the Germans is running out. Alfonso XIII was worried. He had a feeling that his country was facing a great crisis. If you are not careful, it may be destroyed. Count Romanones and Preto left the palace, hoping to find news through their own channels. Romanones sent someone directly to notify the British ambassador. Want to get further news from the British. After all, he also worked hard for the 10 million mark reward offered by the British. The place where the two met was in a hidden cafe. The British ambassador did not come by himself, but also the American ambassador. The changes in the situation in Spain have also made the Americans very interested. As the only major country in the world that can rival Germany, the strength of the United States is slightly weaker than that of Germany. However, overall it's pretty good. If there is any country in the world that can pose a threat to Germany's hegemony, Well, it is undoubtedly the United States that deserves it. However, in the competition with Germany, the United States has always been at a disadvantage. While striving to develop its own strength, especially its military strength, the United States also hopes to be able to stumbling the Germans secretly. In this case, it will undoubtedly help to weaken Germany's strength. This time the British are doing things in Spain, and there is also the support of the Americans behind them. Americans also wanted a war between Spain and Germany. Of course, they knew that with Spain's strength, they could not be Germany's opponents. However, if Germany can be convicted of wanton invasion of weak and small countries through this incident, it will be a heavy blow to Germany's already bad reputation and international reputation. And the United States can take this opportunity to further expand their influence in other countries. With the support of other countries, the strength of the United States will develop faster and greater. It may not be too difficult to surpass Germany by then. When Preto saw the American ambassador, he couldn't help frowning. He felt more and more that this matter was a big trap. If he could, he even wished it hadn't happened at all. He is even willing to return the money he got from the British ambassador to the other party. But Preto knew that was impossible. Your Excellency, to ambassadors, why are you together? Preto asked. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, this is a coincidence. When you sent someone to inform me, the American ambassador happened to be a guest at my place. Your Excellency, the American ambassador, also expressed sympathy for what happened to your country. So, this time, it is a good time to come with me this time. We hope to express all possible help to the Spanish government, said the British ambassador. If this is the case, it is just a child. Preto is not a 3-year-old child, so he naturally knows what's going on here. It is clear that the British and Americans are in collision. It's no wonder that the British have fled to Canada. Without the asylum of the Americans, they would not be able to gain a foothold in Canada. Under such circumstances, there is naturally a collision with the Americans. Preto nodded, no longer entangled in this issue. Anyway, that doesn't make any sense at all. Your Excellencies, just now, the German ambassador formally threatened us with war. They offered to lease Gibraltar for 99 years at the price of 1 mark. Our government sternly rejected it. Now, the Germans should be furious. It is estimated that soon, they will go to war with us. Preto said. The Germans are as domineering as ever. They were like this when the last war was not over. Now, the world wars are over. But they still do it like that. This is too unreasonable. The country of China is in the eye. The US ambassador expressed his indignation. Who made Germany the world's hegemon now? Isn't this why they can fight whoever they want? Other countries have nothing to do about it. They can only endure it. The British ambassador said. The American and British ambassadors made sarcastic remarks, which made Preto's expression even uglier. Your Excellency, the 2 ambassadors, His Majesty is almost unable to withstand the pressure from the Germans. I'm afraid that he will agree to the conditions of the Germans. Preto said with a dark face. The British ambassador and the American ambassador glanced at each other. If the Spaniards just compromised and retreated like this, it would not be in their interest. Your Excellency, Foreign Secretary, the United States does not agree with the behavior of the Germans. The US government will severely condemn this behavior of the Germans. We will also call on more countries to condemn the Germans and create public pressure on them. I think, in the face of the pressure of public opinion all over the world, the Germans should not invade Spain, the US ambassador said. Obviously, the words of the American ambassador indicated that they were willing to support Spain. However, Preto was less convinced that the Germans would be forced by public opinion to abandon the invasion of Spain. Chapter 881, Suicide. The British Empire will also provide assistance to the Kingdom of Spain within its capacity. Of course, if you are not afraid of the full-scale attack of the Germans, you can even form an alliance with us and join the Allied powers. The British ambassador said with a smile. Preto gave the British ambassador a blank look. Wouldn't it be suicide to join the Allied powers at this time? Maybe the German army will soon launch an attack on Spain. In less than a month, Spain will be destroyed. Spain would not do such a stupid thing. Your Excellency, Spain will not join the Allied powers. We don't want to get involved in the war. We just want to live in peace, Preto said. The British ambassador nodded. God will surely grant your wishes. However, what is before Spain is the aggressive persecution of the Germans. If you compromise this time, the Kingdom of Spain will no longer have a foothold on the international stage. Even if the Germans see that you are easy to bully, they will push you further. Don't forget, the Germans are very happy to do such a thing. Yes, except for Spain, the rest of the countries in Europe have either been defeated by Germany or are allies of Germany, and the rest are some insignificant effects. And Spain is undoubtedly a larger country, and the location is also very important. I believe that the incident in Gibraltar this time is nothing more than a test for Spain by the Germans. If Spain chooses to compromise, then what awaits Spain will be the Germans will continue to persecute and demand endlessly until Spain is completely reduced to a country controlled by Germany. The American ambassador was also alarmist. Prito couldn't help but shiver. If the Germans really have such thoughts, then the future of Spain can be imagined. In order to control Spain, the Germans will certainly not allow their former privileged classes to continue to exist. At that time, they will be dead. Then what should we do? Prito panicked. He hasn't enjoyed enough glory and wealth yet. If he died like this, how could he be willing? The American ambassador and the British exchanged glances, and there was a hint of a smile in their eyes. Obviously, their intimidation has worked. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, if the Germans really want to use force against Spain, the scale will not be too large. At most it will only happen in Gibraltar. Judging by the posture of the Germans, they will not stop until they get Gibraltar. If this is the case, Gibraltar will not be able to keep it anyway, so it is better to fight the Germans in Gibraltar. Regardless of the outcome, at least it shows the courage of the Spaniards, so that other countries in Germany dare not underestimate the courage and determination of Spain. This will be an encouragement to the fighting spirit and morale of the Spanish people. Even if Spain is defeated, it is due to the gap in national strength between the two sides. I don't think the Spanish people will blame His Majesty the King and the government. Other countries will also admire the Kingdom of Spain. If God blesses you, and you keep Gibraltar, then the rise of Spain will be just around the corner. The British ambassador encouraged. Prito thought about it. This seemed very reasonable. After all, if the war only happened in Prito, even if it lost, it would not have much impact on Spain. If you can win by luck, it will be different. Spain's international status will rise steadily. Of course, Prito also knew that the possibility of this happening was very small, almost impossible. At the same time, Prito was a little worried that once a war broke out, it would definitely be successful if they didn't want to control the scale of the war to Gibraltar. If the scale expands and affects the whole of Spain, then the problem will be more troublesome. What if the scale of the war continues to expand? At that time, the Kingdom of Spain will be finished. Prito said, Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, once the situation really develops to that point, the United States of America will stand up and mediate for the Kingdom of Spain as soon as possible. I believe that the Germans will still give us a little face. After all, the United States of America is also a powerful country in the world, said the US ambassador. Prito thought for a while. If Spain voluntarily gave up Gibraltar once the war was defeated, and with the mediation of the Americans, the Germans should not continue to pursue it. In that case, things can be closed. This is undoubtedly the best result for the Kingdom of Spain. It saved face without offending the Germans too much. Your Excellency, the two ambassadors, I personally think your plan is very good. However, you need to convince His Majesty the Emperor. How about this? His Majesty the King secretly summoned you to at the palace tonight. Can you convince His Majesty the Emperor? It's up to you, Prito said. Okay, no problem. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, in order to express my gratitude, if it succeeds, the United States of America will not lose your benefits, the American ambassador said. Prito nodded. He would naturally be willing to get the extra benefits. Moreover, he has considered it, and this will not have much impact on the Kingdom of Spain. Therefore, he still takes these benefits with peace of mind. That night, the American ambassador and the British ambassador had a secret audience with Alfonso XIII. During their meeting, they assured Alfonso XIII that, if the Germans did use force, they would provide help to the Kingdom of Spain. alone may even be provided to Spain to fight this war. At the same time, they also guaranteed to control the scale of the war to Gibraltar. If Gibraltar is exceeded, the Kingdom of Spain can immediately surrender to Germany. The United States will also stand up to mediate, and they can even pull other countries, such as the Austro-Hungarian Empire, to mediate. In this case, the Germans should save face. Prince Alfonso XIII had no idea in the first place. Being fooled by the two ambassadors, he immediately thought that this plan had a great possibility. Most importantly, it would allow him and the Kingdom of Spain to save face. With Gibraltar destined to be lost, Alfonso XIII is still very willing, if he can fight a small-scale war, to save the face of him and the Kingdom of Spain. The next day, in front of the German ambassador, Alfonso XIII sternly rejected Germany's request. Chapter 882. Hands on. Your Excellency, Gibraltar is an inherent territory of the Kingdom of Spain. Therefore, it is reasonable for the Kingdom of Spain to recover Gibraltar. No country has the right to accuse the Kingdom of Spain on this issue, or threaten the Kingdom of Spain. Regarding your country's proposal, unfortunately, the Kingdom of Spain cannot accept the request to lease Gibraltar. Gibraltar is also of great use to the Kingdom of Spain, and we are going to use it ourselves. King Alfonso XIII said. The German ambassador seemed a little unbelievable that the Spaniards dared to reject the request of the German Empire, and was stunned for a while. After all, the German Empire is the world's most powerful country that has just won the World War. Spain, on the other hand, is a country that has long since declined. Although, it can barely be regarded as a second-rate power. However, for such a country, Germany can easily crush them to death. In the face of the powerful German Empire, Spain did not even have the power to fight back. But now, the Spaniards have unexpectedly rejected the request of the German Empire, which is obviously too unexpected for everyone. After a while, the German ambassador came back to his senses. Well, Your Majesty, since you have made a choice, then, I hope you and your country can withstand the wrath of the German Empire. May God bless you and your country. I hope that the next time we meet, His Majesty the King will have such courage. After the German ambassador finished speaking, he turned and left. Alfonso XIII, his face was as hen. The attitude of the German ambassador is really too arrogant. This made him very angry. Order our most elite troops to station in Gibraltar. If the Germans launch an attack, they must resist their attack. Alfonso XIII ordered. Germany's attitude made Alfonso XIII very angry. This made him almost be overwhelmed with anger. If the scale of the war is limited to Gibraltar, Alfonso XIII still has the courage to fight Germany. It was, of course, largely the assurances of the British and American ambassadors that they would mediate if the scale of the war extended beyond Gibraltar. Britain and Germany are still at war and will not participate in the mediation. But America is different. They are a powerful country second only to Germany. Even if Germany is the world's hegemon, it should give the United States a little face. If you can't beat it, just admit defeat. The big deal is to accept the terms of the Germans and lease Gibraltar to them. In this way, he has an explanation no matter whether it is internally or externally. Therefore, Alfonso XIII can be regarded as confident. Of course, this is entirely what Alfonso XIII himself thinks. Will the situation develop in the direction they expected? Berlin, Imperial Palace. Qin Tian and the military and political ministers of the German Empire were all stunned at this moment. What did the Spaniards do? Have their king and ministers been kicked in the head by donkeys? They actually rejected the good intentions of the empire. The Imperial Prime Minister Bismarck exclaimed. Originally, almost all the important ministers of the German Empire believed that under the persecution of Germany, the Kingdom of Spain would compromise. They would agree to Germany's request and lease Gibraltar to Germany. In this case, it will give both parties a step down. This time, the matter can be resolved satisfactorily. However, to everyone's surprise, the Spaniards' courage exceeded everyone's expectations. They sternly rejected the demands of the German Empire. This made the situation even more serious. This is not only about Germany's strategic deployment, but also about Germany's face. The behavior of the Spaniards undoubtedly slapped Germany in the face. It seems that we were too optimistic before. We thought that the empire could command the world if it became the hegemon of the world. However, on the Iberian Peninsula, which is so close to the empire, there are people who dare not give the empire face. Qin Tian, his complexion is also very ugly. The behavior of the Spaniards, in his opinion, is clearly a provocation to the German Empire, a provocation to him, the Emperor. Your Majesty, the Spaniards dared to do this, and I'm afraid someone was instigating them behind the scenes. Our Majesty, the Spaniards dared to do this, and I'm afraid someone was instigating them behind the scenes. People discovered that the British ambassador to Spain and the American ambassador to Spain had secretly visited the palace. As for what they talked about, we don't know yet. Reported. It's obvious now that Britain and the United States must be backing up the Spaniards, so they dare to be so arrogant. Foreign Minister Wahid said, Your Majesty, since this is the case, then we don't need to pin our hopes on diplomatic negotiations. Let's do it directly to Spain. Marshal von Falkenhayn, Minister of War and Chief of the General Staff, said. Although the World War has just ended, the reform of the German army has also begun. However, this does not mean that the German army has no ability to attack. Dealing with a country like Spain is relatively easy for Germany. Qin Tian nodded. At this time, it is obviously impossible to use other methods. Deploying troops and winning cleanly is more effective than anything else. Army and Navy, let's prepare for this battle together. We have two combat goals. One is to take Gibraltar. The other is to humiliate Spain. Unless it is absolutely necessary, don't expand the war. Qin God said. Although, Germany is certainly capable of defeating Spain, and even occupying the entire territory of Spain. But Qin Tian didn't want to provoke another war when the smell of gunpowder smoke from the World War hadn't dissipated. In this case, it will have a considerable impact on Germany. At the same time, the world situation will become tense again. What Germany needs now is peace, in order to digest the benefits they gained in the war. Yes, Your Majesty. Marshal von Falkenhayn and Marshal Reinhardt replied. Your Majesty, if it is just to take Gibraltar, it is enough to dispatch a marine division and the Mediterranean fleet. If the Spaniards do not surrender, we may have to mobilize more troops. Even if it is just a show, forced deterrence is fine. Marshal von Falkenhayn said. Well, you can figure it out. Qin Tian said. Qin Tian didn't care about conquering a small country like the Kingdom of Spain. He believes that with Germany's military strength, this problem can be easily resolved. If even the Kingdom of Spain can't handle it, then Germany has such a powerful force for nothing. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 883, Attack. On January 31st, 1916, the World War had just ended, but thick clouds of war once again gathered in the Mediterranean. The main fleet of the German Navy's Mediterranean Fleet has assembled in Gibraltar. Also arriving at the same time was the 2nd Division of the Marine Corps. Originally, in the plan of the German Navy, only one regiment of Marines was needed to take Gibraltar. Now, Spain has joined in. In order to ensure that Gibraltar can be taken and resist the Spaniards' counterattack, it directly pulled the entire 2nd Marine Division over. Therefore, it took a little time. After all, no matter how weak Spain is, it is still a country with a population of 20 million. Among other things, there are still 200,000 to 300,000 troops. If mobilization is carried out, it is not a problem to our millions of troops. If too few troops are put into battle, it will not be able to withstand the Spaniards' counterattack at all. Fortunately, Gibraltar has a narrow terrain. As long as it defends the narrow strip less than 1 kilometer north of Mount Takri, it can resist the Spanish attack. In such a long and narrow area, there is no need to deploy many troops. Coupled with the support of the naval artillery firepower of the German Navy, no matter how many troops Spain dispatches to counterattack, they will only be bombarded to death in the end. On January 31st, the German Foreign Ministry issued a statement stating that the Kingdom of Spain colluded with the United Kingdom, threatened the interests of the Allies, and demanded that the Kingdom of Spain withdraw from Gibraltar. However, the Kingdom of Spain denied it, claiming that they had no collusion with Britain, and refused to withdraw from Gibraltar. Even a fool would not believe this. If Spain and Britain really didn't have a secret agreement, how did the British give Gibraltar back to them? Of course, everyone thinks this is a conspiracy by the British to trap the Spaniards. But the Spaniard didn't seem to know, and he jumped into it foolishly. Spain's refusal gave Germany an excuse. That afternoon, the German Navy's Mediterranean fleet launched an attack on Gibraltar. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the 7 capital ships of the Mediterranean fleet smashed their hulls on the sea less than 10 kilometers away from Gibraltar, and aimed their main guns at the fortress of Gibraltar. Although, the Gibraltar fortress also has a lot of large caliber fortress guns, and even fortress guns with a caliber of 305mm. However, for these cutting-edge battleships equipped by the German Navy, the power of these fortress guns is too weak, and even if they are hit, they may not be able to penetrate the armor of these battleships. These capital ships of the German Navy's Mediterranean fleet are new capital ships designed by the British after they were defeated. The defense has been greatly strengthened. Although a certain speed has been sacrificed, the impact resistance has been greatly strengthened. After the failure of the British Navy, they finally realized their mistakes. However, it was too late. The capital ships they redesigned and built failed to help Britain rise again, but fell into the hands of Germany, which further strengthened the strength of the German Navy. Start the attack. On the flagship Helgoland battleship, Lieutenant General Mayoff gave the order to fire. This is the first battle of the Imperial Navy after the end of the World War. It is also the first battle of the establishment of the Mediterranean Fleet, and it is also the first battle after Lieutenant General Mayoff became the fleet commander. Of course he wants to win a clean victory. Only in this way can he establish prestige among the Imperial Navy. Following Lieutenant Admiral Mayoff's order, the 350 caliber 380mm main guns of the battleship Helgoland began to roar. Armor-piercing bullets weighing more than a ton roared towards the fortress of Gibraltar. After the battleship Helgoland opened fire, the other 3 battleships of the same level and 3 battle cruisers of the Molt class also opened fire immediately. For a while, the 7 capital ships had a total of 72 380mm main guns, and they started shooting frantically. Originally, the British equipped these battleships with 381mm main guns of 45 times the caliber. However, in order to be able to use the shells of other capital ships of the German Navy replaced the main turret and adopted a 380mm main gun with a caliber of 50 times. Although, this has somewhat affected the performance of the battleship. However, with the efforts of the designers, this impact has been minimized. Boom. 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 Heavy shell smashed into the Gibraltar fortress under the action of huge kinetic energy. The fortress built on Mount Takri, although it has been around for many years. However, it is still very strong. Many fortresses are built on the bases of mountains and have strong defenses. Boom. Or 380mm artillery shell hit a fortress, and a burst of earth and rocks flew across. However, the armor-piercing projectiles failed to penetrate the fortress, and only blew up one layer of the fortress defense. But the impact of the explosion of the shell shocked all the Spaniards in the fortress to death. Counterattack. Comeback. Major General Donald stayed in the underground headquarters of the fortress, listening to the thunderous roar from above his head. His face was very ugly. After leading his troops to take over Gibraltar, he originally wanted to leave here and return to his division headquarters. However, an order from Madrid made him set up the division headquarters in Gibraltar. This made him suffer so much that he couldn't tell. The Germans are so powerful, how could his troops be able to resist it? Although his unit is considered a powerful unit in the Spanish army, compared with the elite German army, the gap is not a little bit. Not to mention, the Germans still have so many powerful capital ships to assist in the battle. If it is calculated in this way, they will have no chance of winning. When the Spanish army took over Gibraltar, it also included the Gibraltar fortress. The British army did not destroy the fortress, and the whole fortress including those fortress guns were intact. In the ammunition depot, a large number of fortress artillery shells are neatly stacked. It can be said that the British deliberately left these ammunition in order to allow the Spaniards and the Germans to fight. It's just that Major General Donald doesn't have enough artillery in his hands to unleash the power of these fortress artillery. Moreover, His artillery is all army artillery, which is quite different from the artillery of coastal defense fortresses. Boom. Boom. The fortress guns of the Gibraltar fortress fired, but only a small number of large caliber fortress guns fired. Moreover, the impact point was several hundred meters away from the German battleship. Such artillery, if you want to hit the German battleship, unless God shows up. Chapter 884, Vulnerable. Boom. Boom. The capital ships of the German Navy's Mediterranean fleet fired continuously, and heavy shells hit the fortress of Gibraltar one after another. Although, the fort is strong. However, in the case of being hit continuously, no matter how strong the fortress is, it can't hold it. What's more, the fortress of Gibraltar was built many years ago. There is already a big gap between the defense requirements at that time and the power of the main guns now. Boom. A turret equipped with a 280mm fortress gun was hit continuously, or 380mm artillery shell directly penetrated the fort and exploded inside. In an instant, the entire fort was blown to pieces. The fortress guns were blown up and distorted. As for the Spanish soldiers in the fort, they were blown to pieces on the spot. My God. The men who guarded that fort are all dead. The German bombardment is so fierce that we can't stand it at all. The German naval guns are all 380mm. Our fortress can't resist it at all. If this continues, we will all die here. As the power of the German naval guns gradually emerged, the fortresses in Gibraltar could not resist at all. One after another the forts were destroyed by the ferocious German naval guns. This demoralized the Spanish troops stationed at the fortress of Gibraltar. After all, the Spanish army is not elite in the first place. Under such circumstances, it is a strange thing to be able to hold on. Run away. If we continue to fight, we will all die at the hands of the Germans. Gibraltar is occupied by the British. Let them take it. The Germans want it. Give it to them. It's of no use to us anyway. I don't know why we want to occupy it. It's not suicide. Is it? An officer complained. In the critical situation on the battlefield, many Spanish soldiers fled directly. When Major General Donald learned of this situation, he was even more furious. Bastard. How could they do this? Get them back. Major General Donald ordered. The Spanish army gave him an order to defend Gibraltar. Do not evacuate without receiving an order to evacuate. Otherwise, what awaits him will be a court-martial trial. Major General Donald didn't want his bright future to be ruined like this. It's just that the Spanish soldiers were terrified. Even if they were suppressed by the officers, they didn't have much fighting spirit. Under such circumstances, can they be expected to continue to fight? Even if they were forced to stay, they would not be able to exert much combat power at all. The shelling of the German Navy's Mediterranean fleet lasted only an hour, and the Gibraltar fortress was almost destroyed. We have destroyed the Gibraltar fortress, and the engineers responsible for rebuilding it will probably have a very headache. Lieutenant General Mao Fu said with a smile. This is unavoidable. The fortress of Gibraltar is already outdated. After we took over, it naturally needs to be rebuilt according to our requirements. These fortresses are useless. Instead of waiting for the engineers to blow them up like this, we should destroy them. Drop. Rear Admiral Reeder, Chief of Staff of the fleet, said with a smile. Lieutenant General Mao Fu nodded. That is indeed the truth. Let the Marines land. Next, it is up to them. Order the main gunfire to start extending. Light cruisers and destroyers approach, and provide fire support for the Marine Corps. Lieutenant General Mao Fu ordered. The main artillery firepower of the fleet began to extend to the depth of Gibraltar. At the same time, the light cruisers and destroyers continued to drive towards the shore. Next, they will use small and medium caliber naval guns to provide fire support to the Marine Corps. In order to facilitate the Marine Corps to win the next battle at the lowest cost, Major General Hans, commander of the 2nd Division of the Marine Corps, also issued an order to attack. The 4th Marine Regiment, aboard several hundred landing craft, rushed to the beaches of Gibraltar. Originally, Major General Hans had nothing to do with this battle. But because the Spaniard's head was caught in the door, he was ordered to come with the rest of the 2nd Marine Division. This made Major General Hans very satisfied. In his opinion, this is the credit that came automatically to his door. Hundreds of landing craft rushed to the beach, which still looked very spectacular. Although these landing craft are only 2 or 3 kilometers away from the beach, this distance is actually very dangerous. Once the Spaniards fire violently, they may cause a lot of damage to them. Boom. 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 The light cruisers and destroyers of the German Navy's Mediterranean fleet began to pour shells. Although these small and medium caliber naval guns are not as powerful as the main guns of battleships. However, with the Gibraltar fortress already destroyed, these small caliber naval guns were enough to kill the Spaniards. Quick, the Germans are landing. Get into position and hold them off. Order the artillery to fire and sink the German landing craft. When they wash up on the beach, we are screwed. A Spanish officer roared loudly, but a shell fell beside him. When the shell exploded, there was only a piece of minced meat left on the ground. Boom. 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 Dense artillery shells continued to fall on the positions of the Spanish army, blowing up their positions and tearing the Spanish soldiers to pieces. My God. The Germans are firing too hard. The Spaniards have not fought a war for more than 10 years, especially as weapons and equipment become increasingly advanced. The Spanish army has no actual combat experience with these advanced equipment. When they encounter the most powerful German army in the world, it is natural to imagine what the consequences will be. The landing craft of the German Marine Corps washed up on the beach. Heavily armed soldiers jumped off the landing craft and lay down on the beach to shoot at the Spanish army. Mortar fire. Destroy the Spaniards' machine gun. A second lieutenant platoon leader ordered. Boom. A mortar shell accurately hit a Spanish army machine gun, blowing the machine gun into parts. At the same time, the German machine guns also started firing, making it impossible for the Spanish troops on a certain line of defense to raise their heads. As more and more German Marines landed, the German army began to attack gradually. Although, the Spanish army has an advantage in strength. However, they have already paid a lot of casualties under the fierce shelling of the German Navy's Mediterranean fleet. Facing the attack of the German Marine Corps, it would be a ghost to be able to resist it. In just half an hour, the 4th Regiment of the German Marine Corps contributed to the first-line positions of the Spanish army, and a large number of Spaniards fled to the north. Chapter 885, Counterattack. General, the German offensive is too strong for us to hold on. The front line has collapsed, and the rout is retreating north. The Germans are in pursuit, so let's run. If it's too late, we will all fall behind. Into German hands, suggested a staff officer. Escape. What can I do if I escape back? If I fail to fulfill His Majesty's order, I will be sent to a court-martial. At that time, I will definitely be hanged. Donald's face turned pale. General, there will always be a chance. It's not that we don't fight desperately, but that the Germans are too powerful. We are not their opponents at all. The staff officer persuaded. Major General Donald hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded. He didn't have the courage to kill himself, and he didn't want to fall into the hands of the Germans as a prisoner. Although, fleeing back to Spain would also be dangerous. However, he no longer cared about that much. If you're lucky, you might be able to save your life. Command the troops to retreat across the board. Major General Donald gave the order. The Spanish army began to withdraw from Gibraltar across the board. They were all frightened and did not have the courage to continue fighting. Upon hearing the order to retreat, many Spanish soldiers ran. If it wasn't for the commander's order to die, they wouldn't want to stay in this ghost place. The Spanish army quickly withdrew from Gibraltar and retreated to the north of the border before stopping in fear. Will the Germans cross the border to attack us? Major General Donald asked with lingering fear. Apparently he feared that the Germans would attack across the border. In that case, they simply cannot resist. If he just lost Gibraltar, maybe he still has a chance to get away. After all, if the war is limited to Gibraltar, the scale of the war is not large. Both sides also ended well. But if the Germans attack across the border, the scale of the war will be further expanded, which is not a good thing for the Kingdom of Spain. Likewise, for Major General Donald, it was a nightmare. Losing Gibraltar and losing the mainland are two different things. The rapid retreat of the Spaniards was completely beyond the expectations of the German army. The head of the 4th Regiment of the German Marine Corps couldn't believe it. His own regiment defeated an infantry division of the Spanish army and quickly occupied Gibraltar. When his troops occupied Takri Mountain, he immediately asked for instructions whether to cross the border and launch a further attack. Major General Hans couldn't decide on this issue, so he had to ask Lieutenant General Malfu for instructions. After all, this time the military operation against Gibraltar is mainly in charge of the Malfu Lieutenant General. Let the Marines garrison on the spot and not cross the border. At the same time, make preparations to prevent the Spaniards from counterattacking. Lieutenant General Malfu ordered. The order issued by the Admiralty is to occupy Gibraltar, not to further attack Spain. Occupying Gibraltar, Germany can still take a reason. If an attack on Spain is launched directly, it is an invasion of Spain. Although, Germany may not care about this. However, if those weak countries are openly attacked, it will also have a very bad impact on the reputation of the German Empire. After receiving the order, the Marines stopped their operations south of the border. At the same time, began to build fortifications. This made the Spaniards breathe a sigh of relief. If the German army continues to attack, the consequences will be serious. However, even so, when Alfonso XIII learned that the German army had easily captured Gibraltar, he was still furious. God, is our army so vulnerable? We deployed an infantry division in Gibraltar. It turned out that it was defeated by the Germans in less than 2 hours and suffered heavy losses. If this continues, how can we fight the Germans? All the military and political ministers in Spain lowered their heads and said nothing. Although, they also think that Major General Donald played too badly. However, they also knew that the performance of other troops might not be much better than this. The strength of the Germans is too strong. In comparison, the Spanish army is rubbish. No matter how many troops are sent, they will probably die. Come here, order the military police to arrest Major General Donald. I will send him to a military court and then to the gallows. Alfonso XIII said viciously. Your Majesty, this is not good. Our battle with the Germans has just begun. If the general is dealt with at this time, it will have a serious impact on the morale of the troops. The Minister of War began to plead. Yes, Your Majesty. Although we were defeated in Gibraltar, there was a reason. The Germans deployed a powerful navy in Gibraltar. Under the blows of their naval guns, we simply could not resist. Prime Minister Count Romanones also said. Alfonso XIII frowned, and the explanations of the two ministers dissipated a lot of the anger in his heart. Okay, let's let Major General Donald go this time. However, I must remove him. Alfonso XIII ordered. This time, no one objected. After all, someone had to be responsible for the big defeat on the front line. It is God's blessing that Major General Donald can save his life. Otherwise, Alfonso XIII wanted to send him to a military court. Everyone, the Germans forcibly sent troops to attack our army and occupied Gibraltar. This tramples on the sovereignty and dignity of the Kingdom of Spain, and we absolutely cannot tolerate it. We want to speak out internationally to condemn this barbaric behavior of the Germans, to accuse the Germans of atrocities. Let the whole world know the ugly face of the Germans. Alfonso XIII said angrily. Yes, Your Majesty. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs will proceed immediately. Foreign Minister Prieto said. In addition, we cannot allow the Germans to occupy Gibraltar just like this. If this is the case, it will become a fait accompli. It will be impossible for us to take back Gibraltar in the future. From now on, dispatch the most elite in any case. Gibraltar must be taken back. As long as Gibraltar can be taken back, we will win. Alfonso XIII said. He imagined that at that time, the United States could intervene to end the war. Yes, Your Majesty. The Secretary of War replied. On February 2, 1916, the Spanish army began a massive attack on Gibraltar in an attempt to retake it. Chapter 886, Massacre. Gibraltar and the Spanish border. The German Marine Corps 2nd Division deployed a regiment. It's not that Major General Hans doesn't want to deploy more troops, it's because the place is too narrow. With a line of defense less than 1 kilometer, it would be considered crowded to deploy an infantry battalion, let alone deploy a regiment. Even so, the troops were dispersed to several lines of defense. As for the other 2 regiments, they were deployed in Mount Takri in the south. Artillery, in particular, is all deployed south of Mount Takri. although relying entirely on the guidance of the artillery observers in front will have a certain impact on the accuracy of the artillery strikes. However, this is also impossible. Who made Gibraltar's terrain too narrow, and it was impossible to place a marine division with nearly 20,000 people. In addition, the Navy's Mediterranean fleet has also been cruising in the waters near Gibraltar. Once the Spaniards launched an attack, they were able to provide the strongest fire support to the Navy. With the powerful naval guns, the Spaniards directly paid a heavy price. The intensive firepower of the Marine Corps, holding a narrow position, is not a problem at all. As long as one's own artillery and naval guns can destroy the Spanish artillery, then the Marine Corps will be able to make the Spaniards pay a heavy price with minimal cost. General, according to the information we have obtained, the Spaniards on the opposite side have assembled 100,000 people. Are they going to go all out? A colonel said to Major General Hans. So, what about 100,000 people? The fighting power of those Spaniards is different from that of 100,000 pigs. Let them attack, and soon, the corpses of the Spaniards will cover the entire defense line. Major General Hans said nonchalantly. Major General Hans did not pay attention to these Spaniards. The previous battle of the German Marine Corps to capture Gibraltar has already explained everything. The combat effectiveness of the Spaniards is so bad that a regiment of German Marines can easily defeat one of their infantry divisions. In this battle, even without the support of the fleet, Major General Hans was confident of resisting the Spanish attack, especially when the terrain conditions are very favorable to them. If the German army can't resist the Spanish attack, then they are too rubbish. Yes, General. The Spaniards' attack is absolutely no different from sending them to death. The colonel had said. North of the border, the Spanish Army General Marc Mission, who was in charge of the offensive, was also having a headache for this. Although he has 100,000 troops in his hands, he still has no confidence in taking Gibraltar. The German army was too strong, so strong that he was about to despair. However, the order has been issued, and he has no other way. May God forgive me. I'll let the brave boys die. After I die, I will definitely go to hell. Admiral Macmillan murmured. Let's attack. His Majesty the King has no patience to wait any longer. Let the boys charge bravely. Our strength is 5 times that of the Germans. We will definitely defeat them, Admiral Macmillan said. However, perhaps even he himself does not believe this. Boom. 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 The cannons of the Spanish army started shelling. For this attack, they specially mobilized more than 300 cannons. Among them, there are many heavy artillery with a caliber of more than 100 mm. It's just that, as soon as these artillery fired, they were immediately spotted by the seaplanes of the German Navy. Waiting for them will be the powerful fire suppression of the German Navy's Mediterranean fleet. According to the coordinates sent back by the seaplane, the 7 capital ships of the Mediterranean fleet began to suppress the artillery positions of the Spanish army. Boom. 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 The naval guns started, and the shells roared towards the artillery positions of the Spanish army. This time, those battleships fired high explosive shells. For ground targets, high explosive bombs are undoubtedly more powerful and more suitable. Hoo. 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 Sharp whistling sounded above the heads of the Spanish artillerymen, and the expressions of those artillerymen changed drastically. My God. German shelling. This is definitely the shelling of large caliber naval guns. Run away, or we'll all be blown to death. The Spanish artillerymen immediately dispersed. However, they still ran a little slower. The shells had already fallen. Boom. The shells exploded on the artillery positions of the Spanish army, and there was a violent explosion. Under the terrifying shockwave, the cannons were overturned one by one, and those artillery were blown to pieces like fallen leaves in the autumn windfall. When the gunpowder smoke cleared, the artillery position has become a mess. A huge crater appeared in the center of the artillery position, and the cannons had been destroyed, and the barrels were all twisted into twists. As for the artillerymen, they had already been torn into pieces, with stumps and broken arms flying everywhere. Boom. Boom. Terrible naval gun shells fell like raindrops. The artillery positions of the Spanish army were in bad luck. Under the heavy shelling of the German naval guns, these artillery positions were destroyed one by one. When Admiral Mark Messiaen learned that the artillery positions had been destroyed in less than 20 minutes, his old face became even more gloomy, as if dripping water. Infantry attack, Admiral Messiaen ordered. Although, reason tells him that he should retreat immediately and withdraw from the range of the German Navy's naval guns. In this way, the lives of most soldiers can be saved. But unfortunately, at this time, Admiral Mark Messiaen didn't dare to do that at all. If he was so frightened and fled by the Germans' heavy shelling, Alfonso XIII would definitely not let him go. At that time, the consequences will be very serious. For his own benefit, Admiral Messiaen can only let those soldiers die. Attack. In the first round of the attack, the Spanish army invested tens of thousands of people. However, because the battlefield is too narrow, the attacking queue is very crowded. If the front of the battlefield can be wider, they will also invest more troops. Only in this way can their superiority in military strength be brought into full play. But unfortunately, Gibraltar's terrain is like this. The Spaniards are coming, ready to fight. The attack of the Spanish army attracted the attention of the German Marine Corps. The Spanish shelling did not last long before and did not cause them any harm. The combat effectiveness of the troops is still at its peak. Fire. As the Spanish army charged in close, the Germans opened fire. A series of mortars and machine guns began to use powerful firepower to harvest the lives of these Spaniards. Chapter 887. Collapse. Da. Boom. 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 The general-purpose machine guns and squad machine guns on the German Marine Corps positions, as well as mortars and grenades, all started shooting frantically. The dense bullets enveloped the Spanish army like a storm. The attacking Spanish troops, crowded on the narrow offensive front, completely became a living target for the intensive firepower of the German Marine Corps. Although the German Army and Marine Corps are the same, each battalion only has 41 squad machine guns and 15 general machine guns. However, a total of 55 machine guns are deployed on positions less than 1 kilometer long, and there is almost 1 machine gun every 20 meters or less. Such a firepower density is undoubtedly very astonishing. Moreover, the troops on the first line of defense can also receive fire support from mortars and grenades on the rear line of defense. Because the terrain of Gibraltar is inherently narrow, therefore, a regiment of the German army must be scattered on several lines of defense. The distance between these lines of defense is only more than 100 meters. Therefore, mortars and grenades can fully resource the front line of defense. If you are not afraid of bullets hitting your comrades in front, even machine gun fire can be used as reinforcement. Boom. 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 One after another, mortar shells and grenades fired by grenades fell into the queue of the Spanish army. The shell exploded, setting off a bloodbath in the Spanish army's queue. The shrapnel flew across, easily taking away a lot of fresh lives, causing great losses to the attacking Spanish army. My God. How can the German firepower be so powerful, and how can their troops be equipped with so many machine guns and light artillery? The Spanish general in charge of commanding the attack was stunned, as if he couldn't believe it at all. General, the firepower of the Germans is too strong. We can't resist it at all. The casualties of the troops are too great. If one regiment goes up, half of the casualties will be lost in less than 10 minutes. If this continues, the troops will quickly die, will collapse. Damn it. The general gave an order to continue the attack. Without an order, don't retreat. On the artillery position of the 2nd Division of the German Marine Corps, the cannons of the doors have already raised their muzzles. Adjustments are being made based on data sent back by artillery observers at the front. When all the cannons were ready, the artillery commander gave the order to fire. Boom. 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 18 150mm heavy howitzers, 36 105mm light howitzers and 54 75mm field guns all started a frenzied shelling. The dense rain of bullets hit the Spanish army that was launching an attack. Intensive shells sounded in the queue of the Spanish army, which further increased the casualties of the Spanish army. The German artillery fire is so powerful, how could we break through their defense line, unless God manifests? It is impossible for our soldiers to attack against the Germans' dense artillery fire and bullet rain. This is no longer a war, but a massacre. The Germans are relying on the strength of their firepower to wantonly massacre our army. We can't continue to attack, it will kill all our troops. We can't let our army die in vain like this. The generals of the Spanish army were terrified after seeing this scene. Although they stay in the safe rear. However, they could imagine how desperate the frontline troops were when they attacked. Boom. Boom. There was an explosion sound, as if the earth was shaking, and the mountains were shaking, and I saw a large group of fireballs in the attacking queue of the Spanish army. Naval gun. This is the main gun of the battleship. The Germans will bombard us with the main gun of the battleship. It's not fair. The Germans actually use the main guns of the battleship, which is really unfair. Although, for the Spaniards, the behavior of the German army this time seems to be bullying the small with the big. However, they have nothing to do with it. The main guns of battleships are too powerful. When dealing with soft targets on the ground, they use high explosive bombs. After such shells accurately fell into the queue of the Spanish army, the scene they caused was like hell. Every shell exploded, forming a blank space in the queue of the Spanish army. All the Spanish troops in this area were bombed to pieces. Run away. We can't beat the Germans at all. Such intensive vitality, if we launch an attack, it is no different from courting death. I won't fight anymore. I want to go home. The attacking Spanish army suffered heavy losses under such intensive vitality blows. Similarly, it also caused their morale to drop completely to freezing point. When seeing his comrades being blown to pieces, even the bravest soldiers would feel fear in their hearts. Under heavy losses, the attacking Spanish army collapsed directly. A large number of soldiers fled in panic. They ignored the repression of those officers. In other words, even the officers who were supposed to prevent the rout of the army fled with the rout. After all, those officers are also human, and they can also be timid. Seeing that the German artillery was so powerful, they didn't have the courage to continue fighting. The attacking Spanish army was quickly defeated. A lot of corpses were left behind. It took less than half an hour from their attack to their complete defeat. However, there were layers upon layers of corpses left on the battlefield, and I don't know how many there were. Not only the Spaniards were frightened, but also the soldiers of the German Marine Corps. The scene where the large caliber naval gun exploded 200 or 300 meters away from them also shocked them. Watching the enemy soldiers being torn to pieces, this feeling is really thrilling. Hope those guys in the Navy take aim, and don't throw the cannonballs over our heads. We're dead then. This battle is too simple. The fierce shelling of the Navy alone is enough to eliminate the Spaniards. There is nothing wrong with us at all. It would be great if every battle was like this. Our losses would be much smaller. In war, people are always going to die. If you don't kill your own people, you will die the enemy. Of course, hopes everyone that their side will pay less losses and the enemy will pay more losses. The attack of the Spanish army was defeated directly in front of the powerful firepower of the German army. Less than half of the more than 20,000 people fled back. At the same time, the rest of the people were scared out of their wits and didn't dare to fight anymore. Chapter 888, Mediation. General, we can't fight anymore. Our troops have lost too much. The first batch of troops who attacked lost more than 60%. Those who retreated had their will to fight collapsed. We have no ability to continue fighting. It is. A lieutenant general tried to persuade. Yes, general. The firepower of the Germans is too strong. Not only do they have powerful machine gun firepower, but also the density of artillery fire is very high. What's more terrible is that they also have fire support from naval guns. The power of naval guns is too powerful. We have to lose hundreds of people in one shot, and almost all of them have no bones left. Our soldiers have no courage to continue fighting. Another lieutenant general also said. Admiral Mark Messiaen's face was livid. The battle had just begun, and as a result, the troops he led collapsed, and he didn't have the courage to continue fighting. This is really embarrassing. Although, he knew that this was the truth. The strength of the Germans exceeded their expectations. However, with the battle like this, he has no way to explain to His Majesty the King. Once His Majesty the King is furious, the consequences will be very serious. He, the commander, will bear the brunt of the punishment. What about the other troops? Can they continue to fight? Admiral Macmillan asked. General, the Germans were so tough in the previous battles. How could our troops still have the courage to continue fighting? Yeah, General. If you send troops to attack, it's really no different from sending them to die. They certainly won't agree. General, if we forcibly issue an order to attack, it might cause the troops to mutiny. In that case, the consequences will be even more dangerous. Admiral Mark Messian was a little frustrated. He knew that the troops really didn't have the courage to fight. Since everyone thinks so, then I will not force it. I will report to His Majesty the King. I hope His Majesty can understand our difficulties. Admiral Macmillan said. In fact, he also thinks that it is very stupid to start a war with Germany for Little Gibraltar. It's not about international honors. After all, Gibraltar was also not in the hands of the Spaniards before, but in the hands of the British. The British returned Gibraltar to Spain so bluntly, they didn't have any good intentions. If you can, just don't. Even for the sake of face, I have to accept it. But there is no need to offend the Germans. The Germans want a loan, so give it to them. Although the rent is almost equal to zero. But that's much better than the heavy loss of troops now. Although Admiral Mark Messian did not agree to go to war with Germany, he was personally loyal to the King of Spain, or to this country. Therefore, he was ordered to command the war. Now, I know that, if I continue to fight, there will be big problems. He had no choice but to comply with the opinions of the officers and soldiers, and stop the attack. General, will we be in trouble if we do this? Some generals were a little worried. I'll take care of everything. Admiral Macmillan sighed. Of course he knew how much trouble it would be to disobey the king's order. However, that is impossible. If he doesn't show up, the others will be punished. With his current position and relationship with the king, at best he would lose his position. Life safety is still guaranteed. But if he doesn't show up, it will be hard for others to tell, and he might be sent to a military court. Such consequences are undoubtedly the most serious. Admiral Mark Messian also didn't want to see other generals lose their lives because of this. General. Some generals wanted to say more, but they were stopped by Admiral Mark Messian. What he has already decided will never change again. Madrid, Royal Palace. After King Alfonso XIII received the telegram from the front, he was furious. Bastards. They dared to disobey my orders. 100,000 people attacked Gibraltar, and now they have no courage to continue fighting. This is really shameful. I will send those cowards to military courts and hang them all. Alfonso XIII cursed with a black face. Obviously, the telegram sent back from the front line made him very angry and very dissatisfied. He originally thought that, even if the Spanish army is really no match for the Germans, at least they can fight a few decent battles in Gibraltar. In this case, even if he asks the Americans to mediate, he still has some face. But now, his army can't go on fighting directly. Doesn't it feel like they are about to be defeated, and they only ask someone to mediate when they have to? In that case, where will his face be placed? Your Majesty, I know Admiral Macmillan. Since he thinks that the battle is over, the situation on the front line should be very unfavorable to us. Otherwise, General Macmillan will never disobey His Majesty's order. You know, he has always been your most loyal general. Prime Minister Count Romanone said. After hearing what Count Romanone said, Alfonso XIII thought about it carefully. He still knows the character of Admiral Maximilian very well, and he is definitely his most loyal general. Since Admiral Maximilian disobeyed his orders, the situation on the front line must have reached a very bad point. Thinking of this, Alfonso XIII couldn't sit still. Then, what should we do now? The strength gap between our army and the Germans is too great. If this continues, we will soon be defeated by them. In case the Germans see that our army's combat effectiveness is low, in an attempt to expand the war, what should we do? Alfonso XIII was frightened. Alfonso XIII is such a person, with a suspicious personality, surprised and surprised, listening to the wind is rain. Now, his mind is no longer blaming Admiral Macmillan for their disobedience to orders, but worried about what to do if Germany takes the opportunity to expand the war and launch a full-scale attack on Spain. Now he knows that the combat effectiveness of their army is simply impossible to fight against the German army. Once the war expands, they will definitely die very ugly, Your Majesty. Since the war can no longer be fought, if we continue to fight, we will inevitably suffer greater losses. Therefore, we have only one way, and that is to immediately ask the Americans to mediate and end this war. This is what the Americans promised. Yes, it's time for him to fulfill his promise, Baron Romanone said. Okay, let the Americans mediate immediately. Alfonso XIII made up his mind. Chapter 889, Conditions of Empire. The war between Germany and Spain in Gibraltar attracted the attention of the whole world. Of course, not some people think that Spain can come back and beat Germany. Rather, they were debating how long Spain could last under German attack. Because both Germany and Spain keep the battle situation secret, it is difficult for other countries to know the specific battle situation for a while. But this does not prevent them from speculating on the battle situation. However, to the surprise of other countries, only the second day after the fighting started, the Spanish government requested mediation from the United States through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This surprised the US government. Could Spain not be able to hold on in just one day? This was beyond their expectations. Originally, they thought that Spain could last for a few more days, and even turned into a full-scale war between Spain and Germany. But unfortunately, the Spaniard is not a fool after all. They will not seek death. After discovering that the strength gap between the two sides was too great, the Spaniard immediately gave up. They knew that, if they continued to fight, they would only pay a higher price. Finding a way to end the war now is undoubtedly the best choice. After all, if it turned into an all-out war, they might be wiped out directly by Germany. Let the ambassador to Germany inform the Germans of our request. Mediate this conflict, US President Woodrow Wilson said. Although, the scale of the war did not meet expectations. But since the Spaniards don't want to fight anymore, let's do their wish. Otherwise, the Spaniards will be driven into a hurry, and if they reveal what the United Kingdom and the United States are behind the scenes, the consequences will be very serious. Although Germany must be very clear about the good things that the British and Americans are doing behind the scenes. However, knowing and proving are two different things. Okay, Your Excellency. Secretary of State Brian nodded. On February 1st, the US ambassador to Germany formally submitted to the German Foreign Ministry a request that the United States hope to mediate the conflict between Germany and Spain. The reason why this incident is defined as a conflict rather than a war is obviously to give both sides a step down. In this case, the problem is relatively easier to solve. Both Germany and Spain readily accepted American mediation. Spain does not want to fight anymore and is afraid to continue fighting. And Germany's purpose is not to destroy Spain, but to take Gibraltar from Spain. Now, the Spaniards have taken the initiative to ask for mediation, so Germany's goal is very likely to be achieved. Under such circumstances, there is naturally no need to continue the war. The location of the mediation was chosen at the US Embassy in Berlin. German Foreign Minister Wachter and the Spanish ambassador to Germany became representatives of both parties and formally contacted to end the conflict. Before the representatives of the two parties formally responded, German Foreign Minister Wachter asked the Emperor Qin Tian what conditions should be put forward in the negotiations. Qin Tian's answer was also very simple. First, Spain wants to cede Gibraltar to the German Empire. It was a lease before. Since they are unwilling, they should cede Gibraltar directly to the German Empire now. Second, the Spaniards want to compensate the German Empire for 1 billion marks of war funds as compensation for the loss of this conflict. Third, Spain must cede the Balearic Islands to the German Empire. Qin Tian proposed only these three conditions. The first two items did not exceed Wachter's expectation. Spain failed in the war, and now it is about to give in. It should make compensation to the empire and cede Gibraltar to the German Empire. This is a matter of course. As for Qin Tian's sudden proposal to claim the Balearic Islands from Spain, this was beyond Wachter's expectations. Moreover, he thinks it is very unlikely that the Spaniards will agree to this one. After all, it is an archipelago with an area of more than 5,000 square kilometers. This is not a small territory for Spain. After losing almost all overseas colonies, the Spaniards valued their territory very much. Your Majesty, the Spaniards are very likely to agree to the first two conditions. However, they may not easily agree to the third condition. Wahid said with some concern. As long as the Empire's attitude is tougher, I think they will agree. After all, this is just an archipelago outside the mainland of Spain. It has no economic value, and it is not of much use to Spain. But if the empire can get here, then our territory in the Mediterranean will expand again. The territories of the three empires, Balearic Islands, Corsica and Sicily, can support each other. In the future we will be in these build airports and ports on the island, and deploy aircraft and fleets. This will further guarantee the empire's interests in the Mediterranean. Qin Tian said. Germany was not originally a coastal country in the Mediterranean, although almost all the colonies in North Africa belonged to Germany. However, the mainland is not bordering on the Mediterranean Sea, making these territories of Germany unsafe. Once a war breaks out, these territories will become the focus of the enemy's attack. Even if Germany wants to mobilize troops from the mainland for reinforcement, it will take a lot of time. In peacetime, it may not take much time to travel from the mainland of Germany to the Mediterranean Sea. However, once a war breaks out, the time required may have to be doubled. Therefore, it is the most important thing to find ways to enhance the strength of the empire in the Mediterranean. Qin Tian even had an idea, that is to slowly acquire all the larger islands in the Mediterranean Sea. In this case, Germany will have a real foothold in the Mediterranean. In addition to Sicily, Corsica, and the Balearic Islands, which are now controlled by Germany, Sardinia, Crete, and Cyprus are not in the hands of Germany. Qin Tian has already made up his mind, and he must make a good plan next to ensure that his plan can be successful. Well, Your Majesty, I know what to do. Vashite nodded. Now that Qin Tian has made a clear request, then, the courtiers, they have no choice but to fulfill Qin Tian's request as much as possible. What's more, if the Balearic Islands can be occupied, this will indeed be of great benefit to Germany. So, at the beginning of the negotiations, German Foreign Minister Wascht directly laid out these requirements, which made the American ambassador and the Spanish ambassador stunned. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 890, Lion's Big Mouth. The Empire only has these three conditions. If the Kingdom of Spain is willing to accept, then this conflict can end. If the Kingdom of Spain refuses, then, unfortunately, I can only say that this time the negotiations have broken down. All consequences will be borne by the Kingdom of Spain. After Wahid finished speaking, he looked at the American ambassador and the Spanish ambassador. The American ambassador frowned. The German request was beyond the expectations of the United States. The Spanish ambassador's face was even paler. In his opinion, the Germans are clearly talking like a lion. It can be seen from the attitude of the Germans. If they do not accept it, then the conflict is very likely to evolve into a real war. Even, the scale of the war may expand. That would undoubtedly be a disaster for the Kingdom of Spain. The Spanish ambassador had no choice but to look at the American ambassador for help, hoping that the American ambassador could help them find a way. Cough. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, your country's conditions seem to be too harsh. The dispute between Germany and Spain originated in Gibraltar. Spain can agree to Germany's lease of Gibraltar. If this is the case, this conflict will end. This is for Germany. Both China and Spain are very beneficial, said the US ambassador. Wahid glanced at the American ambassador and then said, the lease of Gibraltar was a request made by the empire before the conflict. However, the Kingdom of Spain rejected the empire's request without hesitation, discrediting the empire. Now, the conflict has already broken out. Is it possible to end the war if you want to meet the previous requirements of the empire? Obviously, what Wacht has said is still a set of rubber theory. However, now Germany has an absolute advantage. If the conditions of the Germans are not agreed, the negotiations will break down, and the war will break out again. For Spain, such consequences will be unbearable. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, I need to ask the country for instructions on whether Gibraltar can be ceded to the German Empire. However, I don't think His Majesty the King will agree to the last two. 1 billion marks is really astronomical for the Kingdom of Spain. We simply can't afford that much money. In addition, the Balearic Islands are an inherent territory of the Kingdom of Spain, and it is absolutely impossible for the Kingdom of Spain to cede them here, said the Spanish ambassador. After losing this war, the Spaniards also knew very well that they would definitely not be able to keep Gibraltar. If the Germans are more talkative, they can let Spain continue to retain the sovereignty of Gibraltar, and then lease Gibraltar at a very low price. If the Germans were tougher, Gibraltar would have to be ceded to Germany. The Spaniards don't feel bad about this. After all, they have never really managed Gibraltar for more than 200 years, nor have they gained any benefits from it. Gibraltar has always been occupied by the British as a military base. Now, it's just a change to the Germans, no big deal. However, the compensation of up to 1 billion marks, and the fact that the Germans have to go further to claim the Balearic Islands, this is unacceptable to the Spaniards. After all, Spain's financial situation is not very good, and 1 billion marks is enough to make their finances collapse. And the Balearic Islands are the mainland that Spain values, so it is naturally impossible to cede them. Wahid shook his head. The empire is in conflict, but it consumes a lot of ammunition and other war materials. The casualties of the empire are not small, and these need to be compensated. Therefore, 1 billion marks is not much. As for the Balearic Islands, were once occupied by the Roman Empire, the Vandals, the Byzantine Empire, the Arabs, and the Aragonese Empire. The Aragonese Empire originally administered the Balearic Islands as a vassal of the Majorca Empire until 1344 it was spelled into the territory of the empire, and then the entire empire was annexed by Spain. At the beginning of the 18th century, it was occupied by the United Kingdom. It became a Spanish province in 1833. Therefore, the Spaniards did not rule for a long time, and it is not considered your inherent territory at all. Use those islands to make up for the loss of the empire. It is undoubtedly a very cost-effective thing to calm the anger of the empire. If the Kingdom of Spain persists in its obsession, then you will definitely pay a very heavy loss. No country can provoke the majesty of the empire. Any person or country that dares to provoke the empire will pay a heavy price for it. 2 days. You only have 2 days to think about it. If the Kingdom of Spain cannot accept the conditions of the empire, then this means that the negotiations have broken down. And there will never be a chance to restart the peace talks. After he'd finished speaking, he left the US embassy directly. He did this, not as if he came to negotiate, but to inform the result. Seeing Vachta leave, the Spanish ambassador turned pale. He knew that the Germans were serious this time. If the conditions of the Germans are rejected, the consequences may be very serious. The US ambassador's face was also very ugly. The Germans dared to raise such harsh conditions when the US came forward to mediate. Obviously, they didn't take the US seriously. What should we do now? The Spanish ambassador asked with a sad face. Report to the country, said the American ambassador. The Germans obviously did not take the United States seriously and made the United States useless on this issue. If Spain does not agree to Germany's request, then the Germans may really expand the scale of the war and strengthen their offensive against Spain. At that time, Spain will not be able to resist. Well, let's leave these problems to the domestic headache, said the Spanish ambassador. He has nothing to do with the tough attitude of the Germans. The only thing that can be done, perhaps, is to pray to God and pray that Spain can survive this crisis safely. When the Spanish ambassador sent back the conditions offered by the Germans to the country, Alfonso XIII's face turned green. The appetite of the Germans is too big. They not only want Gibraltar, but also want us to compensate 1 billion marks, and even let us cede the Balearic Islands to them. They regard us as a defeat. Can the country be slaughtered at will? Alfonso XIII was very angry. The military and political ministers of the Kingdom of Spain bowed their heads in silence. The conditions offered by the German government exceeded their expectations. However, this is not incomprehensible. Germany is the most powerful country in the world, and Spain offended Germany, allowing it to be dealt with and slaughtered, which is also reasonable. Chapter 891, Intimidation of Force. Gentlemen, what should we do now? Alfonso XIII looked at his ministers. Right now, he just feels a very headache. He didn't want to agree to such harsh conditions from the Germans, but he was also worried that war would detonate after rejecting the Germans' conditions. In that case, Spain will be finished, Your Majesty. There are only two roads before us. Either agree to the terms of the Germans, cede Gibraltar and the Balearic Islands to them, and at the same time, compensate them for the loss of 1 billion marks. Or reject the terms of the Germans, then mobilize immediately and prepare to fight the Germans to the death. Besides, there is no other way. Count Romanone said. Other ministers can pretend to be stupid, but he is the Prime Minister, so he cannot pretend to be stupid. Alfonso XIII couldn't help but frowned. Neither of these two paths was what he wanted to choose. If we mobilize, can we scare the Germans? Alfonso XIII asked. If Germany can give up these harsh conditions, after seeing Spain's determination to fight at all costs, it would be a good thing for Spain. However, Alfonso XIII knew that this might be very difficult, because the strength gap between the two sides is really too big, Your Majesty. Even if we mobilize, I'm afraid we won't be able to defeat the Germans. With our strength, we can mobilize at most hundreds of thousands of troops in a short period of time. The Germans only need to send 100,000 troops to defeat us. So, it is almost impossible to fight the Germans to the death. The Minister of War said. His meaning is very obvious. If you want to fight for a fish to die and a net to break, the final result may be that the fish is dead, but the net is not broken. In the whole of the kingdom, there was a sudden silence, as if even a needle falling to the ground could be heard clearly. So, do we have to surrender like the Germans? Accept their conditions humiliatingly? Alfonso XIII was very helpless. He was originally a very good-looking person. In this case, he might not be able to hold his head up in front of the monarchs of the world. Everyone was silent again, and no one knew what to do. Prito, can you ask the United States to help us? This is what they promised. Alfonso XIII said. As long as the Americans can intercede for Spain, make the conditions of the Germans not so harsh, and make Spain's face a little better, he has no demands on this. Prito shook his head. Your Majesty, the Americans claim that the Germans don't give them face at all. Therefore, they are probably powerless in this matter. After all, the relationship between the United States and Germany is also very bad. The two sides are even in hostility. Your Majesty, there is no way around this. Perhaps, from the very beginning, it was a mistake for us to accept Gibraltar returned by the British. This is clearly a trap dug for us by the British. Even the Americans participated in it among them. They want us to start a war with the Germans and use us to consume the strength of the Germans. Such intentions are really too sinister. Count Romanone said. Alfonso XIII's face suddenly became very ugly, and he also knew that he had fallen into a trap. He even wanted to give himself a slap in the face. Why is he so stupid? At the same time, Alfonso XIII gave Prito a vicious look. He believed that this guy must have played a bad role in it. Prito saw the eyes of Alfonso XIII and was immediately frightened. He knew that next he had to be a man with his tail between his legs, otherwise, he might be in bad luck. The angry Alfonso XIII might even eat his heart. Tell the Americans, if they don't come forward to help us, then we will tell the Germans everything. Let the Germans know that they are behind all this. Alfonso XIII said. He seems to think that this is a very good way to divert conflicts. In this case, maybe Germany will be able to deal with them lightly. Your Majesty, this is probably useless. The German intelligence agencies are all pervasive. They must know that the British and Germans are behind this. However, the Germans have no way to deal with the British and Americans now, so they will vent their anger on us. Count Romanone's words once again shattered Alfonso XIII's delusion. This made Alfonso XIII almost desperate. Damn. Then what should we do? Is it really possible to agree to the Germans' request? Give them Gibraltar, that's fine. However, the compensation of 1 billion marks and the Balearic Islands cannot be given to them. Yes, said Alfonso XIII. Let the German ambassador talk to the Germans again. We are willing to cede Gibraltar to them. In addition, we will compensate them with 100 million marks. This is the bottom line of the Kingdom of Spain. Alfonso XIII said. At this point, he is still unwilling to fully accept the conditions proposed by the German Empire. thinking that he can lower the conditions as much as possible and strive for certain benefits for the Kingdom of Spain. It's just that Alfonso XIII's behavior is obviously unacceptable. Under Qin Tian's leadership, the German Empire has become the most powerful country in the world. And it is now in its heyday. Alfonso XIII's behavior will only bring more trouble to themselves. When the 2-day deadline given by the German foreign minister expired, but the Spaniards failed to accept all the conditions offered by Germany, German Foreign Minister Wachter immediately announced that the negotiations had broken down. This is definitely not good news for the Spaniards. When the news was sent back to Spain, Alfonso XIII was furious and frightened at the same time. He was really afraid that the Germans would do what they said and expand the war against Spain. In that case, Spain will be finished. After Qin Tian learned that the Spaniard still did not agree to his request, he knew that the Spaniard hadn't given up yet, and he was still lucky. What Germany has to do now is to put further pressure on the Spaniards so that they can't bear it. By that time, the Spaniards will naturally agree to Germany's request. Qin Tian issued an order to the Ministry of War, requesting the First Army of the German Army stationed in northern France to quickly move to the southern part of France until it reached the northern part of the Pyrenees Mountains, making a plan to cross the Pyrenees Mountains and attack Spanish posture. Chapter 892. Yield. Germany won the World War and became the hegemon of the world. Germany's military mobilization has also become a special concern of other countries. Especially Germany's neighbors, as well as Germany's opponents, are very sensitive to this. They were all afraid that Germany would attack them without declaring war. In that case, it is estimated that no country can withstand Germany's sudden attack. The First Army of the German Army, although it has been abolished from more than 300,000 people to 200,000 people, however, not only has the strength not been weakened, but it has also been strengthened due to the supplement of a large number of technical weapons. Although Germany occupies nearly half of France's territory, the French government can only linger in the southern region, licking its wounds and slowly recovering its strength. For the German First Army to reach the Pyrenees, it had to enter French territory. In this regard, the French government did not dare to stop it at all and let it go all the way, so that the vanguard of the German army could take the train all the way south and reach the northern Pyrenees. Of course, it will take some time for the large troops of the group army to arrive. In any case, this is a force of 200,000 people. However, even if only one vanguard arrived, it would scare the Spaniards enough. When the US ambassador officially notified Spain of this situation, Spanish Foreign Minister Prieto turned pale. Do the Germans really want to destroy the Kingdom of Spain? Obviously, they couldn't resist the German attack at all. Your Excellency, I have to report to His Majesty the King immediately. Prieto did not dare to stay and immediately went to the palace to report the matter to Alfonso XIII. When Alfonso XIII learned about it, he was also shocked. Damn it, the Germans are really determined to destroy Spain. We knew a long time ago that we shouldn't provoke them. I knew a long time ago that Gibraltar cannot be taken. The British are simply uneasy and kind. Alfonso XIII was anxious like a heat like ants on a pot. He knew very well that if Germany wanted to destroy Spain, it would not take much effort at all. A group army was enough to completely destroy Spain. Even if Spain mobilizes, it will not be of much use. A German group army that has experienced many battles is enough for 1 to 10. After all, compared to the elite troops of the German army, the Spanish army is rubbish. Those hastily mobilized and armed troops are even worse than garbage. It is simply unrealistic to expect such troops to fight the Germans desperately. It is estimated that after the Germans call, those guys will surrender directly. At that time, the Germans will fight all the way to Madrid, as if they were in no man's land. At that time, he, the king, will be deposed and even sent to the gallows, and Spain will be destroyed and become a province or a colony under the control of the Germans. Thinking of this, Alfonso XIII trembled all over, unable to accept such a result. No, it can't be like this. I can't be killed, and Spain can't be destroyed. Alfonso XIII said through gritted teeth. Come here, tell the Prime Minister and other ministers to come. Alfonso XIII ordered. Soon, the Spanish military and political ministers arrived at the palace. Gentlemen, the Kingdom of Spain is now at the critical point of life and death. The Germans have dispatched a large army and are approaching Spain. According to the information we have received, the German army has arrived in the northern Pyrenees. May attack us. Alfonso XIII said. My God. Is the Kingdom of Spain doomed? Our army has not had time to mobilize at all. Even if it is mobilized, it is definitely not the opponent of the Germans. We can't beat them at all. Damn. How dare the Germans be so bold and dare to destroy us? Don't they fear that their actions will be opposed by all countries in the world? The ministers of the Kingdom of Spain also panicked. Although, in the Kingdom of Spain, they can be regarded as masters and enjoy various privileges. But if the Kingdom of Spain is destroyed by Germany, then they are nothing. Even, I'm afraid that in the middle of the war, I can't even save my own life. Gentlemen, shut up. Alfonso XIII was angry. Originally, he was counting on these guys to give him advice. But unexpectedly, these guys were also frightened. How can this be possible? The roar of Alfonso XIII made the ministers calm down, and each of them realized that they had lost their composure. Okay, do you have any suggestions for this? Alfonso XIII asked. Your Majesty, the Germans have made their attitude clear once again. If we don't accept their conditions, they will directly dispatch the army to destroy us. And our army is no match for the Germans at all. Therefore, we have other choices, and we can only accept the conditions of the Germans. Of course, this also does not rule out that the Germans are threatening us militarily. Count Romanones said. Alfonso XIII nodded. He thought what Count Romanones said was very reasonable. Whether the Germans want to take this opportunity to threaten us militarily, we don't dare to gamble anymore. If we still refuse them, they may invade us directly. After all, as everyone says, Germany people's military strength is too strong, and it is nothing to destroy us. Alfonso XIII said. Yes, Your Majesty. Earl Romanones nodded. Since this is the case, we don't have to struggle anymore. Inform the ambassador in Germany, and accept the conditions of the Germans. Alfonso XIII said. On the morning of February 5th, the Spanish ambassador to Germany signed his name in the Memorandum of Understanding on the conflict between Germany and Spain on behalf of the Kingdom of Spain. The memorandum stipulates that Spain bears the main responsibility in this conflict. In order to compensate for the loss of the German Empire, Spain ceded Gibraltar to the German Empire. At the same time, Spain compensated the German Empire with 1 billion marks. Finally, Spain ceded the Balearic Islands to the German Empire. After the memorandum was signed, it represented the end of the conflict between Germany and Spain. Peace was restored between the two countries. The German troops withdrew one after another. Although this has had a certain impact on Germany's reputation. But overall, Germany has gained huge benefits in this conflict. Chapter 893, Take control of Egypt. Through a small-scale war, Germany successfully forced Spain to humiliate and agree to Germany's conditions, not only ceding Gibraltar just taken back to Germany, but also ceding the Balearic Islands that originally belonged to them. Germany. In addition, they had to pay Germany as much as 1 billion marks in war reparations. This is undoubtedly a heavy burden for the Kingdom of Spain. Of course, this result is undoubtedly much better than being destroyed by Germany. With the fighting power of the German army, a group army can wipe out the Kingdom of Spain. Germany successfully controlled Gibraltar, and at the same time, completed territorial expansion in the Mediterranean. Although the Balearic Islands are only a few thousand square kilometers. However, once Germany begins to deploy military forces on the islands, it will not be a good thing for the countries along the Mediterranean Sea, especially the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which is known as the second military power in the world. That's right, after the end of the World War, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the number 2 power of the Allied powers, has already claimed to be the second power in the world. Of course, this is just what they claim to be. There are not many who recognize their identity. The claim of the Austro-Hungarian Empire is just for their own entertainment. As the most powerful country along the Mediterranean Sea, the Austro-Hungarian Empire undoubtedly had great interests in the Mediterranean Sea, especially when they almost swallowed the Balkan Peninsula in one gulp. The coastline has been greatly extended, and they are no longer trapped in the Adriatic Sea as before. This made the Austro-Hungarian Empire eager to achieve a breakthrough in the Mediterranean. But now, Germany controls Gibraltar, which is equivalent to controlling the export of the Mediterranean Sea. Once the Gibraltar fortress is rearmed by the German army, if other countries want to pass through, they will have to be under the supervision of the German fortress. No need to think about it. With the strength of the German artillery, the fortress of Gibraltar will be armed to what extent? Once the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Germany turned against each other, their fleet would never be able to leave the Mediterranean Sea. In another section of the Mediterranean, the German army is also operating. On January 8, 1916, the 3rd Division of the German Marine Corps, with the assistance of the Mediterranean Fleet, successfully landed in Alexandria. Subsequently, the main force of the German 8th Army began to land. Although the British troops stationed in Egypt put up a tenacious resistance, they still couldn't withstand the crazy German attack, easily defeated by the Germans. After all, the British government has already fled to Canada when the British mainland has fallen. In order to consolidate Canada's defense, to avoid being attacked by the German army, Britain has begun to return troops from various colonies to Canada. In order to avoid being intercepted by the German Navy, which had an absolute advantage in the Atlantic Ocean, the troops of the African colonies withdrew to India and Australia, and then crossed the Pacific Ocean to Canada with the help of the United States. This made the strength of the British Army in the African colonies weaker and weaker. On January 12, the German 8th Army assembled an armored division and 4 infantry divisions to attack Cairo. Although there are still more than 20,000 British troops defending here, and there are more than 200,000 Egyptian colonial troops. However, even the British are not the opponents of the German army. Can the Egyptian army be counted on to help them resist the German attack? That is obviously impossible. When the German army approached the city of Cairo, Egyptian Sultan Hussein Kamel immediately sent someone to secretly contact the German army. Even though Egypt is just a poor and small country with a population of just over 6 million and most of them are in the desert. However, Hussein Kamel, the Sultan of Egypt, is not a fool. He knows that the British ship has sunk. If he does not jump off the ship and escape, he and his country will most likely end up with the British. He wouldn't do such a thing. Although, in 1914, Egypt became a British protectorate, but that was entirely because Hussein Kamel, who had just usurped the throne, was eager to stabilize the domestic rule, so he had to rely on the power of the British. Hussein Kamel was a usurper who overthrew his nephew Abbas II and became Sultan. Without the help of the British, it would be impossible for him to rule stably. General Ludendorff, commander of the German 8th Army, immediately reported the situation to the country. Qin Tian approved him to negotiate with Hussein Kamel. Egypt is too far away from Germany. If Germany wants to rule Egypt directly, it is obviously unrealistic. Besides, apart from a canal in Egypt now, there is nothing worthy of Qin Tian's attention. Although, Egypt is rich in oil resources. But now, is Germany still short of oil? The oil extracted from Libya is enough for Germany to consume. What's more, after the 8th Army has taken Egypt, it will cross the canal and advance eastward. Next, the entire Middle East will soon be taken. Most of the world's oil is concentrated there. After taking over the Middle East, does Germany still lack oil? Therefore, the oil in Egypt is not needed, and it should continue to be buried in the sand. Hussein Kamel is well aware of the strength of Germany, and also knows that the weak Egypt hardly has the capital to negotiate terms with Germany. Therefore, Hussein Kamel's special envoy informed Germany that Egypt was willing to become Germany's protectorate as long as Germany could ensure Hussein Kamel's status and his rule in Egypt. After asking Qin Tian for instructions, Ludendorff agreed to Hussein Kamel's small request. At the same time, Germany proposed to reorganize the Egyptian army and help Egypt build a modern army. It is initially expected to help Egypt establish an army of 5 infantry divisions. Officers above the regiment level need to go to the German Army University to study. Officers below the regiment level and above the platoon level need to receive training in a training camp opened by Germany in Egypt before they can serve as officers. In addition, Egypt's police system is also subject to German guidance. There is no doubt that, if Egypt agreed to these terms, they would be on par with a German colony. Both the army and the police were under German control. At the same time, domestic affairs should also accept the guidance of Germany. This makes Egyptian Sultan Hussein Kamel almost reduced to a puppet. However, Hussein Kamel is already very satisfied with being able to keep the status of Sudan. No matter the puppet, it is also the Sultan of Egypt. Moreover, as long as he has good relations with Germany, his children and grandchildren can always be Sudan, which is already a very cost-effective thing. Chapter 894, The Mediterranean becomes an inner lake. Egyptian Sultan Hussein Kamel's defection caused Britain's influence in Egypt to be uprooted by Germany. During the German army's attack on Cairo, the Egyptian army directly turned against the water and turned against it, directly annihilating the entire British army in Cairo. In the subsequent battles in Egypt, the German army became an auxiliary force, and the main force became the Egyptian army. In order to ensure his own rule, Hussein Kamel knew that, after defecting to Germany, the influence of the British had to be eliminated. Otherwise, he would be waiting to be assassinated day and night. Though, the Egyptian army was terrible at fighting. However, the main force of the British army has been eliminated by the German army. In addition, these Egyptians adapted to the terrain here, which made them perform well in the next battle. The main force of the German 8th Army turned to the east and attacked the Suez Canal. This canal is undoubtedly the most important thing in Egypt and Germany, compared with others. This important waterway connecting the east and the west is the top priority. With Germany already in control of Gibraltar, if Germany controls the Suez Canal again, that is equivalent to blocking the beginning and end of the Mediterranean Sea. It can be said that the entire Mediterranean is under the control of Germany. If Germany wants, they can even cut off the trade between East and West at any time. Of course, you can also bypass the Cape of Good Hope in Africa. However, that would be very troublesome. Most of the ships now go through the Suez Canal. The British army is in the Suez Canal, and there are not many troops left. Facing the German attack, they simply could not resist. However, when the British army retreated, they planted a large amount of explosives on both sides of the canal. When they couldn't hold on and had to retreat, the British detonated these explosives. The banks on both sides of the canal were bombed in many places. After the German army took over here, they had to send people to repair it. Even so, the Battle of Egypt also ended with the victory of the German army. Although, the British made a dying struggle, but it was not of much use at all. After all, the Suez Canal is not like the Panama Canal, which consists of locks and the like. If the locks and other major buildings are blown up like the Panama Canal, it will take a long time for the canal to reopen. Your Majesty, the 8th Army has already completed the Battle of Egypt. The entire campaign took only half a month. Admiral Ludendorff plans to let the troops rest for a week, while waiting for logistical supplies, before marching to the Middle East. Feng? Field Marshal Falkenhayn reported. Qin Tian nodded. This time the German army's attack on the British colony could not be completed in a short time. That takes a year or two. Qin Tian also knew that there was no rush. What's more, when fighting in North Africa, although the enemy's strength is not strong, they need to fight against the harsh climate. The heat, drought and sandstorm will be unbearable for German soldiers who have not adapted there. The non-combat attrition caused by acclimatization is even greater than the loss in the war. Under such circumstances, it is undoubtedly important to slow down the pace of attack and ensure the combat effectiveness of the troops. The military and the government must cooperate with each other in Egypt to ensure that we control Egypt. At least, Egypt must become a dog we raise. We let them bite whoever they bite. Qin Tian said. Yes, Your Majesty. All the military and political ministers of the empire replied. Your Majesty, when the British were retreating, they used a large amount of explosives to blow up both sides of the Suez Canal. Now, although the navigation of the canal has not been greatly affected, however, further repairs are needed. Prime Minister Bismarck said. Let's set up a special canal management company to be responsible for the maintenance, management and charging of the canal. Tell the Egyptian Sultan to ensure the safety of the canal. In this way, we can give him 20% of the annual canal navigation fee. Qin Tian said. Although Germany is powerful, it is too far away from the canal. If the Egyptians make a little move on the canal, Germany really has nothing to do about it. Giving a little profit to the Egyptians will also allow them to devote themselves to the affairs of the canal. Yes, Your Majesty. Prime Minister Bismarck nodded. Of course he understood the truth. Your Majesty, we cannot completely let the Egyptians be responsible for the defense of the canal. We must have an armed force under our own control. In this case, not only will we be able to station a force in the canal area, but we will also be able to ensure that our opponent's control of Egypt. Once there is an unexpected change in Egypt, we can send troops immediately. Von Falkenhayn suggested. Qin Tian thought for a while, and then said, let's set up a canal security force. It has 10 brigades under its jurisdiction, and each brigade is a battalion. The training and equipment are all in accordance with the army standards. In this case, more than 10,000 people. The army can not only ensure our control of the canal, but also ensure our influence in Egypt. As for the funds for this army, let it be spent from the navigation fee of the canal. Yes, Your Majesty. Marshal von Falkenhayn and Prime Minister Billet both nodded. Your Majesty, we are stationing military forces in the canal. This may cause dissatisfaction in other countries. After all countries in the world agreed to demilitarize the canal. Foreign Minister Wahid said. We don't have troops stationed there. They are just security forces, not armed forces. Qin Tian was clearly playing with words. Wahid didn't say much. He was just reminding Qin Tian. Since Qin Tian already knew, there was no need to say anything more. Wahid believed that Qin Tian could handle it well. Perhaps, countries will protest, because of Germany's stationing of armed forces in the Suez Canal, but is protest useful? They dare not take any substantive action at all. Therefore, Germany has no need to pay attention to the protests of other countries. As the hegemon of the world, Germany is a bit arrogant and unreasonable, and other countries have no way to do anything to Germany. Now Gibraltar and the Suez Canal are under our control, and the entire Mediterranean Sea is like an inner lake under our control. Marshal Rian Hadshir, Secretary of the Navy, said excitedly. After all, the territories on the northern coast of the Mediterranean Sea belong to various countries. However, almost all the land on the southern coast of the Mediterranean Sea has become a German colony. The Mediterranean has really become a lake in Germany. Chapter 895, Middle East Strategy. By the way, Your Majesty, the princes of the Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait will probably arrive the day after tomorrow. Do you have time to meet them? Foreign Minister Wahid asked. When the German army attacked Egypt, the Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait secretly contacted Germany, hoping to send a prince to visit Germany secretly. Although, the Middle East is still under the control of the British. However, all countries in the Middle East know that the British are finished, especially when they discovered that the British were withdrawing from the Middle East to India. The Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait are relatively influential countries in the Middle East, especially the Kingdom of Najd. They are almost about to control the entire Arabian Peninsula. Kingdom of Kuwait has been established for more than half a century, although it has become a British protectorate. However, their national security is guaranteed. At the same time, their operations in the Middle East over the years have made their country small, but their influence is not small. In the case of Britain's defeat, the pattern in the Middle East will also be greatly affected. For this reason, countries in the Middle East have to adopt other methods for their own national interests and future. The Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait are the pioneers. They contacted Germany, hoping to switch their families, so as to ensure that their national interests would not be affected. Germany will of course accept the initiative of the Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait. After all, Germany is too far away from the Middle East, and if it wants to rule here, it is a bit out of reach. The only way is to support local forces and let them rule here instead of Germany. In this case, the rule of Germany can be made more stable. At the same time, a lot of power can be saved. Of course, there are also downsides to doing so. As time goes by, when these countries become stronger, or if Germany declines, they will definitely do everything possible to get rid of Germany's control. However, as long as they continue to be strong, even if they have such thoughts, they will not have such courage. I heard that the built-in prince is only 13 years old? Qin Tian asked. Yes, Your Majesty. But he is the eldest son of the built-in king, and the oldest prince. Wahid said. Your Majesty, the actions of the Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait also mean taking their heirs to the throne as hostages, Prime Minister Billow said. Qin Tian nodded, and he also thought that it was very wise for the Kingdom of Nasi and the Kingdom of Kuwait to do so. They know that it is very difficult to get the recognition and satisfaction of Germany. And once they send the heir to the throne to Germany, Germany will be able to support them with confidence. At the same time, it also shows their determination not to betray. In this case, I'll take the time to meet them, Qin Tian said. He personally met the two princes, which undoubtedly showed Germany's attitude. At the same time, it can also make the Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait more at ease. Your Majesty, does the Empire's Middle East strategy need to be revised? Qin Tian asked. Not for the time being. The British are retreating. After their retreat, there will be a lot of power gaps. What the Empire has to do is to seize this opportunity and fill these gaps. And further ensure that the Empire can strengthen its rule in the Middle East. Once if the Empire controls the Middle East, the Empire will be able to easily control the entire world in the future. Qin Tian said. Your Majesty, is the Middle East really that important? Marshal von Falkenhayn asked. In his view, the Middle East is full of yellow sand, and everything but sand is sand. The population is also very sparse. Apart from the fact that geographical location is relatively important, nothing else matters. No, Marshal, you underestimate it too much. Do you know about oil? Qin Tian asked. Is there oil there? The other ministers also responded. Qin Tian nodded. Yes, there is oil there. There is a lot of oil. Especially the Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait have very large oil reserves in their land. It can be said that 1% of the world's more than 60% of the oil is concentrated in the Middle East. The importance of oil is beyond doubt. Whether in wartime or peacetime, this energy is the most important. Therefore, we must control the Middle East, absolutely not let other countries get their hands on it. Qin Tian's attitude is very firm. As he traveled from another time and space, he knew the importance of controlling the Middle East. Isn't the reason why the American emperors of later generations are so arrogant is because they control the Middle East. The powerful armed forces of US imperialism can make them overwhelm any opposing force. If Germany can control the Middle East, this will further enhance Germany's strength. At least, energy can be used to get stuck in the necks of other countries. If there is no one, not only will economic development be severely affected, but at the same time, military strength will also be severely reduced. Airplanes, tanks and cars, without oil, are just a pile of scrap metal. The other military and political ministers were also completely shocked by the data. Qin Tian said. 60% of the world's oil? That is undoubtedly a very terrifying reserve. You must know that the oil that Germany extracts from Libya is already enough for Germany's oil consumption, and there is even a little left over. But the oil in the Middle East is obviously more, and much more. This also means that it will be a huge fortune, and at the same time, it is also a very useful strategic weapon. Your Majesty, if this is the case, then we can't let the Middle East go without saying anything. The countries in the Middle East must be placed under the control of the Empire. Prime Minister Billow said with a serious face. Although, Prime Minister Billow has always been averse to the use of force. However, he also favored the use of force when necessary, in order to secure the interests of the Empire. Since the interests of the Middle East are so important to Germany, even if it is to use force to control the Middle East, in Prime Minister Billow's view, it is completely worthwhile. Qin Tian nodded. This time the Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait took the initiative to show their favor to the Empire, which is a very good start. The Empire can easily enter the Middle East through them and take over the vacuum left by Britain. Think about it later. The method is to further strengthen the control of the Middle East. The Najd Kingdom has great ambitions, and the Empire can support them to further control the Arabian Peninsula. But at the same time, the Empire must have military bases and stations troops in the Middle East. Only in this way can the Empire be guaranteed control of the Middle East. Chapter 896, Princes. In another time and space, the American Empire has military bases all over the world. Their aircraft carriers are cruising in the world's major oceans, declaring the hegemony of the United States and demonstrating the powerful force of the United States. Other countries have to rely on the United States. It can be said that US imperialism is the most powerful country on this blue planet. Now Germany, although it has become the hegemon of the world, is still far from the level of the American emperors of later generations. Among them other things, so many opponents are enough to give Germany a headache. To establish hegemony, you must first defeat all of these opponents. Only in this way can Germany's hegemony be stabilized. What's more, the US imperialists' troops stationed in various countries are not stationed in vain. All countries need to pay for it. Although it is not responsible for all military expenditures, it is at least half. This is equivalent to those countries spending money to support the US military. This enables the United States to achieve global deploy and dominate the world. In Qin Tian's view, these are all things worth learning from Germany. After killing all the opponents one by one, Germany will also station military forces around the world like the US Emperor, so that the German armed forces can directly control the world. Your Majesty, what if the Kingdom of Najd is allowed to accept the help and guidance of the Empire like the Kingdom of Kuwait? Prime Minister Bismarck asked. In that case, these two countries can be regarded as completely under the control of Germany. It can be used as a reference. However, give them more autonomy in internal affairs. However, diplomacy must be consistent with the empire. The army must use the weapons and equipment of the empire, and officers and generals must be trained by the empire. The police system must also accept guidance from the empire. In addition, the empire has the right to exploit mineral resources in their country. The oil extracted, after deducting the cost, can give them 20% of the profit. Qin Tian said. Yes, Your Majesty. Prime Minister Pilot and Foreign Minister Vash nodded. Because of their guidance, the next negotiations with the representatives of the Kingdom of Nazi and the Kingdom of Kuwait will be led by them. As the Emperor of the Empire, Qin Tian naturally wouldn't have time to take charge of these special negotiations. He has already set aside time to meet the princes of the Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait. Your Majesty, with the support of the Kingdom of Najd, our army's operations in the Middle East will be very smooth. If this is the case, it is expected that we will be able to directly attack India next month. Von Falkenhayn the Marshal said excitedly. Compared to Egypt and the Middle East, the German military and political ministers undoubtedly value India the most. India, by contrast, is where the real riches are. Before, Germany could only watch the British make a lot of money from India, and they could only drool aside. But now, India has become a big piece of fat on Germany's mouth, and it can be bitten, as long as it works hard. For such a piece of fat, they have long coveted it. Well, the advancement of Egypt and the Middle East has gone smoothly beyond our expectations. In this way, we can save a lot of time to attack India. However, it is not enough to attack India with the strength of the 8th Army alone. The 4th Army should go too, Qin Tian said. Although, the United Kingdom is already fully shrinking its troops. However, the troops deployed in India are still the largest except Canada, with more than 200,000 troops. This still does not include the situation of the British and Indian troops. The British Indian Army is a force composed of British recruits from India as ordinary soldiers and junior officers, and then British officers as officers. In the World War, the British and Indian troops armed millions of people. They are active in both the French battlefield and the British mainland battlefield. It's just that the fighting power of these Indian Assams is really terrible. If the combat effectiveness of German soldiers is 100, then the combat effectiveness of British soldiers is about 80. And India's Assam's combat effectiveness is only about 40 or less. With such combat power, can they be expected to play a big role on the battlefield? That is obviously impossible. Most of the time, it is best for these Indian **** not to back off. However, despite the poor combat effectiveness of the Indian Assam, the ants killed more elephants. Judging from the information held by Germany, in order to defend India, or to persist in India for a longer period of time, so that the United Kingdom can get a longer breathing period, the British are crazily arming Indian Assam. There are countless merchant ships transporting weapons, equipment, and ammunition from the United States to India. Obviously, the Americans also intervened in it, wanting Germany to make a big fall in India. It even plunged Germany into the quagmire of the Indian War. In that case, it is also very beneficial to the United States. Yes, Your Majesty. Marshal von Falkenhayn nodded. Of course he knew that the British were frantically expanding the size of the British and Indian troops. However, he didn't care about that. He has already experienced the combat effectiveness of Indian soldiers. How much combat power can those Indian Assams who have just put down their hoes and picked up their rifles have? He didn't believe it at all. He believes that once the German army lands in India, it will be very easy to defeat these Indians. While Qin Tian was discussing the strategy of the Middle East and India with the ministers, someone was also discussing him in the Strait of Gibraltar. A light cruiser of the German Navy is returning to the German mainland through the Strait of Gibraltar. Although this is just an ordinary light cruiser, there is a group of special guests on board. They wear traditional Arabic robes. These people are missions from the Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait. Because it was a secret visit, there were not many people. Apart from Prince Abdul of the Kingdom of Najd and Prince Salim of the Kingdom of Kuwait, there are only the foreign ministers of the two countries and a handful of entourages. Brother Salim, are we going to arrive in Germany soon? Will the great emperor receive us? The young Prince Abdul looked forward to it. For the 13-year-old Prince Abdul, Qin Tian is undoubtedly a legend. Although Qin is only 28 years old, he rules the most powerful empire in the world. Moreover, Qin Tian was not the #1 heir to the throne in the first place, and he got to where he is today through his own struggles, which is undoubtedly even more inspirational. I have asked the people on the ship. We will arrive in Germany in 2 days. As for whether we can see His Majesty the Kaiser, I don't know. However, we should be able to see him. Prince Salim said. He was already in his 30s, so he was naturally much more mature than Abdul. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 897, Emperor Idol. The German Empire is really powerful. Along the way, their warships are everywhere. Prince Abdul said. Although he is distinguished, he is the prince of Najd's kingdom. However, the current Najd kingdom is not the local tyrant Saudi Arabia of later generations. It is still a very poor country. As a prince, he just has an extra identity. Compared with the powerful German Empire, the kingdom of Saudi Arabia is undoubtedly much weaker. Even, he was a little worried. How would the German Empire respond to them this time, and would their demands be met? Thinking of this, Prince Abdul felt a little inferior. Yes, the German Empire is too powerful. Even the British Empire, known as the empire on which the sun never sets, was defeated by them. Prince Salim also sighed. The original Kuwait was just a county under the rule of the Ottoman Turkish Empire. After receiving the help and support of Britain, they succeeded in becoming independent from the Ottoman Turkish Empire and became an independent country. However, Kuwait also became a British protectorate. It's just that, apart from a slightly more important geographical location, Kuwait has nothing else to offer. This makes the British pay little attention to Kuwait. Therefore, Kuwait is nothing but a very poor and backward small country. The World War is over, and the Germans have begun to receive the fruits of victory. Their army is attacking Egypt, and the Middle East will follow. If we can't get the support of the Germans this time, then maybe our country will be attacked by the Germans. This will be a disaster for us. Prince Salim continued. Kuwait was so small that the Germans could crush them with one finger. Even the Kingdom of Najd, which is much larger than the Kingdom of Kuwait, is nothing in front of the Germans. This makes them very passive in the face of Germany's strength. Of course, this is also impossible. Small countries are like this. If a small country wants to survive in this world, it has to rely on a big country. Before, both Kuwait and the Kingdom of Najd depended on the United Kingdom. Now that the British are down, they have to hug the Germans' thighs. Only by relying on a powerful country can their interests be guaranteed. While Prince Abdul and Prince Salim were talking, the foreign ministers of the two countries were also having secret talks in the cabin. Compared to the two princes, these two foreign ministers are undoubtedly the main representatives of the negotiations. The two princes were just sent to Germany as hostages. The specific content has to be discussed with the Germans by them. Brother Ghazi, will our trip to Germany go well this time? A middle-aged Arab man asked. He is Ahmed, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Kuwait. I don't know. I hope God will bless us. However, we are a small country, no matter in front of the British or in front of Germany. As long as we can meet the requirements of those big countries, no matter how bad we are, our safety can still be guaranteed. Our country, the population is sparse and poor. Those big countries don't even look down on us," said Ghazi, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Nezi. Of course, his words reveal a deep sense of helplessness. If possible, who wouldn't want their country to be rich in resources and populous? Hamid nodded. He also thinks that they have no place for big powers to conspire. Therefore, there is no need to worry too much at all. The speed of the light cruiser was very fast, and it arrived in Wilhelmshaven on January 28th. Got so many ships. The German Navy is really too powerful. When the light cruiser entered the naval port and saw the huge capital ships, representatives from the Kingdom of Kuwait and the Kingdom of Najd all expressed their gratitude. Were shocked. Although the German Navy has been divided into 5 fleets. However, apart from the Mediterranean fleet that has entered the Mediterranean Sea to perform missions, only the Atlantic fleet has moved its home port to Scapa Flow. They are only temporarily stationed in Scapa Flow and will further search for good ports in the future. Of course, the Atlantic fleet set its sights on the Portuguese Azores. It's just that the German Navy is still trying to figure out how to get the Azores from Portugal. The warships moored in Wilhelmshaven mainly belong to the Pacific Fleet and the Indian Ocean Fleet. The capital ship of the local fleet is still under construction. The Pacific Fleet and the Indian Ocean Fleet, as the German army is about to launch an attack on India and Southeast Asia, are about to leave the German mainland. But even so, those huge battleships like hills still shock these country bumpkins from the Middle East beyond words. It is indeed the world's most powerful country that defeated the British Empire. Its military strength is too strong. Prince Salim sighed. The German Empire is indeed the most powerful. Prince Abdul's eyes were full of admiration. German Foreign Minister Wascht personally came to Wilhelmshaven to greet them, which flattered the delegations of the two countries even more. When Wahid told them that the Emperor of the Empire would entertain them with a banquet tomorrow night, it made these representatives very happy. After all, before they came, they never expected that the Kaiser would receive them. Now, Wascht told them that the Kaiser would meet them, which undoubtedly made them feel that this trip to Germany should go smoothly. On the evening of January 29th, Kaiser Qin Tian hosted a banquet in the Imperial Palace, entertaining representatives of the Kingdom of Najd and the Kingdom of Kuwait. When Qin Tian appeared in the banquet hall, everyone stood up and saluted Qin Tian. "Good evening everyone," Qin Tian said with a smile. "Your Majesty, I'm so happy to see you." Prince Abdul couldn't restrain the joy in his heart and said. Qin Tian couldn't help being taken aback. This was the first time he encountered such a thing. The fanatical admiration in Prince Abdul's eyes surprised him even more. "Prince Abdul, nice to meet you." There was a smile on the corner of Qin Tian's mouth. "Got. His Majesty the Emperor has spoken to me." Prince Abdul did not expect Qin Tian to be so amiable. "Your Highness, please don't lose your temper." Ghazi, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Najd, hastily pulled Prince Abdul's robe. Prince Abdul realized his gaffe, and his face flushed with embarrassment. This episode did not have any impact on the banquet. On the contrary, it made the atmosphere of the banquet much more relaxed. The representatives of the Kingdom of Kuwait and the Kingdom of Najd continued to compliment the strength of the German Empire, which made the German ministers who attended the banquet very satisfied. Chapter 898, Protectorate. Emperor Qin Tian held a dinner to welcome the missions from the Kingdom of Nezi and the Kingdom of Kuwait who came from afar. This made the members of these missions very satisfied, and their faces were all flushed. The whole banquet can be described as a feast for the guests and the host. The next day, German Prime Minister Billow and Foreign Minister Wascht negotiated with the delegations of the two countries at the Prime Minister's residence. For the sake of confidentiality, in addition to the participation of the foreign ministers of the two countries, only Prime Minister Billow and Foreign Minister Wascht participated in the German side. Moreover, when the delegations of the two countries went to the Prime Minister's mansion, they were picked up by car, sent directly to the mansion, and then got off. The outside world did not know who entered the Prime Minister's mansion. Both. The Middle East was previously the sphere of influence of the British. When the British controlled the Middle East, they had been exploiting various countries and stirring up disputes in order to achieve the goal of controlling the Middle East. The people of all countries in the Middle East have always lived in the heat of the water, said the Prime Minister of the Empire, below. Yes, Your Excellency. The British have always practiced colonial rule in the Middle East, Ghazi said. Hamid then began to accuse the British of cruel exploitation in the Middle East, completely describing the British as heinous people. And I'm grateful to Germany for defeating Britain and saving the people of the Middle East from fire and water. After hearing this, Prime Minister Billow and Foreign Minister Wahid couldn't help but twitched their mouths. Isn't everyone saying that Middle Easterners are simple? But now it seems that these guys are equally treacherous and cunning. However, both of them are diplomats, and diplomats have never been able to be honest people. After all, for the sake of their respective national interests, it is a necessary requirement to talk nonsense when people talk about others. Now, the Empire has defeated the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom of England and Wales, which inherited the main body of the United Kingdom, has signed a peace treaty with the Empire. One of them is to transfer all the former British colonies to the German Empire. I think you should understand this, the meaning of one. Foreign Secretary Wahid said. Both Ghazi and Hamid nodded. They knew that hiding would definitely be impossible. The Germans have clearly stated this point, so this undoubtedly means that the Germans have decided to turn the Middle East into their colony. Germany's attitude made the two feel very uncomfortable. As Middle Easterners, they cannot control the fate of the Middle East. These big countries from the West control their life and death. This has to be said to be a kind of sadness. Your Excellency Prime Minister, Your Excellency Minister of Foreign Affairs. The Kingdom of Kuwait is willing to become the protectorate of the German Empire, Hamid said first. Kuwait is just a small country with a population of just over 1 million. The country is almost all desert, with only a few oases. Such a country is extremely weak. Facing a world hegemon like the German Empire, they simply have no other choice. If you disobey, there is only one consequence, and that is to be destroyed instantly. Prime Minister Billow and Foreign Minister Wahid nodded in satisfaction. Prime Minister Billow said, "Is this what your emir means?" "Yes, Your Excellency Prime Minister. The emir of our country has already decided," Hamid said. Before visiting Germany, the emir of Kuwait made a resolution with the ministers. They are well aware of the fate of their country, and facing the German Empire, they simply cannot oppose it. Instead of this, it is better to be a protectorate honestly. Anyway, Kuwait can only be a protectorate. Indeed, it seems that Kuwait really only has the life of a protectorate. In the past, it was independent with the support of the British. After independence, it became a protectorate of the British. Later, it became a protectorate of the US imperialists. Kuwait has no choice, especially after discovering oil. There is no way to keep the oil with their national strength. Therefore, it can only be attached to a strong country. Only in that way can we protect our own interests. Therefore, there is no way for them to do that. Well, from now on, Kuwait will be the protectorate of the empire. His Majesty the Emperor will issue an edict later. Prime Minister Billow said. Kuwait is still relatively obedient, which makes the empire already have a foothold in the Middle East. However, one thing that needs to be reminded is that after becoming the protectorate of the empire, the internal affairs must accept the guidance of the empire. Of course, the empire will generally not interfere in the internal affairs of the protectorate. Diplomacy must be consistent with the empire, and it is absolutely not allowed to violate the empire. The police system should be trained by the empire. At the same time, a modern army should be established with the help of the empire. Once a war breaks out, the army of the protectorate must obey the command of the empire unconditionally. According to the population size of the Kingdom of Kuwait, the empire will help Kuwait build an infantry brigade. In addition, if the empire feels it is necessary, it can station a certain amount of troops in Kuwait. Can your country meet these requirements? Foreign Minister Wahid asked. Hamid couldn't help being stunned. He had no idea that, after becoming a protectorate of Germany, there were still so many requirements to be complied with. If you agree, the lifeline of the Kingdom of Kuwait will be completely controlled by the Germans. They didn't even have a chance to betray, because the army and the police are almost all in the hands of the Germans. Once you want to betray, I'm afraid that the Germans will not send troops to suppress it. The army and police of their own country will be able to suppress the betrayal. The ordinary Ghazi could not help frowning. Obviously, they thought the conditions of the Germans were too harsh. Before they became a British protectorate, and Britain would guarantee their national security. However, although the United Kingdom will also interfere in their internal affairs, it will definitely not make so many regulations. Obviously, if you agree to become a protectorate of Germany, you have to be bound by these regulations. Hamid hesitated, but nodded. He knew that now there was no chance of repenting. If they repent, the Germans will definitely not let the Kingdom of Kuwait go. It was too easy for the Germans to destroy them. They had no chance of resisting at all. Your Excellency Prime Minister, Your Excellency Minister of Foreign Affairs. The Kingdom of Kuwait is willing to abide by these regulations and become the most loyal protectorate of the German Empire, Hamid said. Though, he did not consult the Emir. But he knew that, even if the Emir of the Kingdom of Kuwait knew about it, he would never refuse, or dare not refuse. Because, in the face of the request of a big country, the Kingdom of Kuwait simply has no right to refuse. Chapter 899, I have to give in. Kuwaiti Foreign Minister Hamid cleanly agreed to the conditions of the German side, and signed his name on the subsequent documents. It can be said that from now on, the Kingdom of Kuwait has become a protectorate of the German Empire. Although, this also means that Kuwait will lose a lot of power. Even if Germany wants to evacuate the Emir of Kuwait, the Kingdom of Kuwait has nothing to do about it. After all, the country's military and police are already under German control. Even if Germany wants it, it will station troops in Kuwait. In this case, the Emir of Kuwait will be reduced to a real puppet. Of course, they can hope that the Germans will not interfere in their internal affairs. In this case, it is still very good to be able to guarantee the power of internal affairs. At least, there will be no power left. Kuwait has become a protectorate of the German Empire, so the rest is the Kingdom of Najd. The eyes of the Prime Minister of the Empire, Billow, and the Foreign Minister, Wahid, all fell on the Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of Najd, Ghazi. Suddenly, Ghazi felt a huge pressure. He knew that after the Kingdom of Kuwait had surrendered, the Germans would be tougher on the Kingdom of Najd. Your Excellency Ghazi, what about the Kingdom of Najd? How are you thinking? The Empire asked Wahid. Ghazi gritted his teeth, and then said, Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, if the Nazi Kingdom agrees to become your country's protectorate, we can maintain diplomatic consistency with the German Empire. Our army can also obey the German Empire when war breaks out. Imperial Command. Our police system can also receive training from Germany. However, we hope that the control of the army and police system is in our own hands. Obviously, the Kingdom of Najd is unwilling to hand over the cornerstone power of the country, such as the army, to the Germans. Although the current Nazi Kingdom has only a few million people. However, they are the most powerful country on the Arabian Peninsula. Moreover, the current Nazi Kingdom is still expanding outwards. They want to defeat the Rashid family and occupy the Waichi Kingdom. At this time, military power is very important. What's more, the Kingdom of Nazi didn't want to completely hand over the fate of its own country to the Germans. The Kingdom of Kuwait is too weak, so they have nothing to do. So it can only be at the mercy of the Germans. However, Najd Kingdom is different. They are already the most powerful country on the Arabian Peninsula. So, they will have their own ideas. Imperial Prime Minister Billow and Foreign Minister Wahid frowned after hearing this. Your Excellency Ghazi, to become a protectorate of the empire, the conditions are set and cannot be changed. Therefore, your country can only choose to become a protectorate of the empire or not to become a protectorate of the empire. To become a protectorate of the empire after the protectorate, the empire will generally not interfere in the internal affairs of the protectorate. You can rest assured about this. Wahid said. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, is there no other choice? Ghazi asked with a painful face. He knew that, if the Nazi Kingdom refused, then what awaited them might be a war. The German army is attacking Egypt, and the British army in Egypt cannot hold back at all. Once the Germans have settled Egypt, they can immediately march to the Arabian Peninsula. And the army of the Nazi Kingdom is absolutely impossible to be the opponent of the German army, even though they are more adapted to the terrain and climate on the Arabian Peninsula. However, the gap in equipment and combat power is not so easy to make up. Watched shook his head. Once the rules of the empire have been decided, they cannot be changed, Your Excellency Gazi. There is absolutely no need for you to worry that Germany will control the army of the Najd Kingdom. It is completely unnecessary. In terms of the population of the Najd Kingdom, the empire will only help you build 3 infantry divisions. There are only 5 infantry divisions in total. Thousands of people. Such a small army is nothing to the empire. Unless your country has the idea of rebelling against the empire after becoming a protectorate of the empire. Otherwise, there is no need to worry at all. Prime Minister Billow said. Your Excellency Prime Minister, if the Kingdom of Najd decides to become a protectorate of the German Empire, we will definitely not rebel. Gazi said hastily. If you want to rebel after becoming a protectorate of the German Empire, isn't that courting death? With Germany's military strength, they can be easily destroyed. In this case, what else do you have to worry about? Prime Minister Billow asked. Gazi hesitated for a moment, and then said, Your Excellency, the Najd Kingdom still has a long cherished wish. Therefore, we must ensure the control of the army. The Rashid family, that controls the Wazir Kingdom is our enemy. Our king, His Majesty, is determined to eliminate the Rashid family and annex the Wazir Kingdom. Therefore, war will break out at any time. At this time, we must ensure the protection of the army. Control is the only way. After we have wiped out the Rashid family and annexed the Ghazi Kingdom, we will hand over the army to Germany for reorganization. What do you think, Prime Minister? Gazi said. The reason he said is half true and half false. It is true that the Kingdom of Nazi really wants to destroy the Rashid family and take control of the Kingdom of Waji. However, the fake is that they want to use this as a delay. Prime Minister Billow is not an idiot. Once the Nazi Kingdom annexes the Wasi Kingdom, it will dominate the entire Arabian Peninsula and become even stronger. At that time, it will be even more difficult to control them easily. Your Excellency Gazi, we also know a little bit about your country's enmity with the Rashid family and the Wasi Kingdom. If your country becomes a protectorate of the German Empire, the Rashid family and the Wazir Kingdom, the empire can help you resolve it. Prime Minister Billow said with a smile. However, Billow's smile made Gazi feel terrified. He knew that there was no way out now. Billow's underlying meaning is very obvious. The Kingdom of Najd can become a protectorate of the German Empire. Similarly, the Ghazi Kingdom can also become a protectorate of the German Empire. If the Kingdom of Nazi refuses, then once the Kingdom of Wazi becomes a protectorate of Germany, the German army will help the Kingdom of Nazi to destroy the Kingdom of Nazi. Although the Ghazi Kingdom is weaker than the Nazi Kingdom, with the help of the German army, it will be very easy to destroy the Ghazi Kingdom. Gazi knew that this was undoubtedly a threat to the German Empire. However, in the face of this threat, they have no way to fight at all. There seemed to be no other way but to compromise and give in. Chapter 900. Take control of the Middle East. Your Excellency, the Kingdom of Najd is willing to become a protectorate of the German Empire. With no other choice, Gazi, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Najd, had to succumb. He knew that there was only one way to survive before the Nazi Kingdom, and if they refused, what awaited them would be destruction. In order for the country and the nation to continue to exist, they have no other choice but to submit to the German Empire. A smile appeared on the faces of Prime Minister Billow and Foreign Minister Wahid. Your Excellency Gazi, don't you need to ask King Aziz for instructions? Prime Minister Billow asked. Your Excellency Prime Minister, there is no need. His Majesty the King has given me the power to deal with this matter. Gazi said. When he left the Kingdom of Najd, Aziz expected that the attitude of the Germans might be very tough. Therefore, he told Gazi that, if it was impossible, he did not have to confront the Germans. After all, although the Kingdom of Najd has become the hegemon on the Arabian Peninsula, but in the eyes of the powerful German Empire, they are still too weak. Even facing the German Empire, they didn't even have the courage to resist. As a hero who led dozens of warriors back to Saudi Arabia, he was able to defeat the Turks and establish the Kingdom of Najd. This kind of insight is still there. Okay, then you can sign the document. However, I have to remind you that, after becoming the protectorate of the empire, you must maintain the safety of the interests of the empire. Once the empire discovers that there is an act that harms the interests of the empire, the consequences will be severe. It's very serious. Prime Minister Billow said with a serious face. Yes, Your Excellency Prime Minister. The Nazi Kingdom will never do such a thing, and will never betray the German Empire. Gazi said. He knows that the Germans walk the talk. Once the Nazi Kingdom really rebelled against the German Empire, the consequences would be very serious. However, as a protectorate of Germany, the army and police are under the control of the Germans. Do they still have the ability to rebel? After all, rebellion is something to do with your head up. If you are not careful, you may lose your life. In this case, it would be best. The empire will still take great care of its own protectorate. First of all, your safety will be protected by the empire. No country can pose a threat to you. Secondly, economically, you will integrate into the economic system of the empire. It is foreseeable that your economy will soon develop. Billow said. However, Hamid and Ghazi looked bitter. The kingdom of Najd and the kingdom of Kuwait were a piece of yellow sand. Such a harsh natural environment. How to develop the economy? It's not that they don't want to do anything, but that the conditions are too bad and there is nothing they can do. It can be said that the current kingdom of Kuwait and the kingdom of Najd are both very poor, and they are not like later generations, who relied on oil to develop rapidly, and became local tyrants. Prime Minister Billow smiled when he saw the faces of the two. He knew what they were thinking. You two, you can tell your king, after you go back. Soon the empire will invest in your two countries on a large scale. Billow said. Investment? Why? Ghazi asked suspiciously. We found from the documents left by the British that both of you have a large amount of oil resources. The German Empire will provide funds and technology to exploit your oil. After deducting the cost of the oil extracted, you can get a percentage of the profit 20. I think this will greatly boost the economies of your two countries, Billow said. Oil? Do we have oil there too? This is really great. Hamid smiled. They have been living a hard life all these years. If oil can be extracted, then they will be able to live a prosperous life. Ghazi is also laughing, but his villain is a bit far-fetched. Because he was wondering if everything Germany said was true. Well, that oil would have been theirs. But why they can only get 20% of the profits, but the Germans have to get 80%? This seems so unfair. However, now that the kingdom of Najd has become a protectorate of Germany, they have nothing to do in the face of Germany's whatever they want. Don't say that Germany only gives them 20% of the profits. Even if Germany takes all the profits, they have nothing to do. In comparison, the Germans' approach is already very benevolent. The kingdom of Kuwait and the kingdom of Najd both became protectorates of the German Empire, which expanded German power in the Middle East. It can be said that after controlling these two kingdoms, Germany can be regarded as controlling the Middle East. Kuwaiti delegation and the Najd Kingdom delegation did not stay in Germany for long, and set off for home on the third day after the signing of the treaty. However, Prince Abdul and Prince Salim stayed on. The younger Prince Abdul will go to school in Berlin. The older Prince Salim went to the Imperial Army University for further studies. Obviously, these two princes are heirs to their throne. Keeping them in Germany is also to reassure Germany. King Aziz of the Kingdom of Najd and Emir Jabbar II of Kuwait were very speechless after learning of the conditions proposed by Germany. However, they also know that there is no way out, and there is no other way but to compromise. Facing the strength of Germany, they can only recognize it. Similarly, they can only hope that Germany will do what it says and not interfere in their internal affairs. For the Kingdom of Najd, the only advantage is probably that Germany is willing to help them deal with the Rashid family and the Kingdom of Wazi. This is undoubtedly a surprise. Under the attack of the German army, it was obviously impossible for the Rashid family and the Wazi kingdom to resist. In early February 1916, the German 8th Army crossed the Suez Canal and entered the Sinai Peninsula. Then, began to attack Ghazi Kingdom. At the same time, the army of the Nazi Kingdom was also ready to attack the Wazi Kingdom. The strength of the Ghazi Kingdom was inferior to that of the Nazi Kingdom, let alone confronting the fierce German army. The battle went very smoothly. In less than a week, the main force of the Ghazi Kingdom was defeated. The German 8th Army did not go deep into the desert of the Arabian Peninsula, but was stationed along the coast. The rest of the remnants of the enemy let the army of Nazi Kingdom deal with it. The 8th Army had more important targets to attack. With the support of Germany, the Kingdom of Nazi annexed the Kingdom of Wazki and changed its name to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And Germany also used this to control the entire Middle East. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.